Welcome to the Good Old Blades podcast. I am your host, Aaron Levere, and join me as we talk to other knife makers and craftsmen about anything and everything knives. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Good Old Blades podcast. I am your host, Aaron Levere, and I am joined by knife maker, motorcycle enthusiast, musician, artist, husband, dad, and grandpa, Nick Huff.
Dude, that's red carpet for sure.
Dude, that's off your Instagram, buddy.
I know. As soon as you started reading it, I was like, oh, wait a minute, I recognize this.
Yeah, how about that? Somebody does their research.
Nice.
Yeah, so I wanted to have Nick on the podcast, not only because I love him, he's a super great guy, but because I've been really interested in his work, his association with knife making, and his touch on the Hollywood side, his just everything about him. I mean, he's an enigma and jack of all trades. And I really think, Nick, that over the last 4 or 5 years that we've known each other, we're pretty much a hop, skip, and a jump away from each other. And I've gotten at least a side seat to what you've been doing with knives, and I've been really proud of you and the stuff that you've been doing. So it's like, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Man, it's my pleasure. I'm stoked to be here. To be honest, I hadn't seen a lot of your episodes yet, and I need to delve into that and see what that's all about. I'm definitely down to, dig deeper into the knife making, the dudes that are doing the knife making. So.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, what I wanted to do with the podcast is just get people like yourself on and talk, because the good thing is that you've done a lot of social media work in videos and being present for knife shows, and you have like those little documentary excerpts and stuff that you've done too. And so people get to see you, hear you, kind of get a little glimpse of what you're like. But for a lot of knife makers, man, you almost never, you don't know what they look like, or their social media presence isn't really great. And you don't know what their story is. And, out of all the knife makers I've known and had friendships with, yours is like, I could probably have multiple episodes where we just talk about one avenue of your life. So
Right.
Whatever we get done here, just know that there's a lot more about you that I'm sure that we could cover. I ask a bunch of probative questions, and then we spend 3 hours on a podcast. This is not Joe Rogan.
I've done that a couple of times. I've done a couple of podcasts that were, pretty long form, some long interviews. So
yeah.
But I'm 54, so I've done a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
That's one of the. That's one of the things that I've done a lot of stuff, and I still do a lot of stuff. I mean, I play in a band. I make knives. I do all that. I've tattooed for 20 years, and I don't do that anymore. But the art side of tattooing and stuff, I'm still super interested in all that stuff. So yeah, I keep busy trying to have fun. But I can tell you something, man. I can tell you a secret, and it's funny because you mentioned like other knife makers and other people. You don't know them. You don't know who they are. It's funny because every once in a while, and I've just learned all this on my own, but I got a couple of friends that have social media, and I tell them, like, tattoo artists are really bad about this. They'll just have hundreds and hundreds of pictures of tattoos, but I mean, you walk in the shop, you don't know who that dude is, like, at all, and I've done this to Dan. I've told him, like, put a picture of yourself on there. Just put a picture of yourself on there. And he's like, man, like that actually gets me a lot of hits, and you know what I mean? Just the interaction where people want to see. To be honest, people want to see who they're buying from. So.
Well, and I think people in social media really want they want celebrity, right? They want to be recognized by people, but they don't understand sometimes. The commitment it takes to find what is the mode that you get presented on the best, right? So for me, I'll post up work stuff and things on social media, but to be honest with you, a person learns a lot more about me through the way that I ask questions and do this podcast. And so as much
Right
as,
on.
as much as I might share online or don't share, I think that you probably get a better picture of who I am on a consistent basis through here versus me doing
Right.
social media stuff. And it mostly just comes to the fact that I am really bad about social media consistency.
Right.
And like it's
Right.
just, man, the first thing I don't think about is like waking up and taking pictures of my stuff or talking about
Right.
things, and with my life, knives are part time, right? I mean,
Right. Right. Right.
I say part time because it seems like it's full time at times, and I'm always involved in knives, but I'm not
Right.
always
Yep.
out in the shop making stuff actively and
Right.
presenting that. So, like, if you want a picture of who I am, you really have to kind of you got to find where I'm the most consistent at, and really the place is the podcast.
Right. Right on.
But I mean,
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about like how we met and kind of some of my observations, and I want to then talk a little bit more about your journey that got you to knives.
Yeah. Let's get into it.
And
I want to. I'd love to hear like the other aspects of how I'm perceived, however people see what I do and stuff. I mean, I
yeah,
try to be pretty transparent with everything I do. That's kind of the key to the whole thing. To be honest, I've probably showed you this before, but there's a TED talk where this cat talks about how you know why people buy from a certain company or why they have loyalty to a certain company. Hey, bud, I'm doing a podcast. Did Mama tell you? So, but it talks about the how, the why, all that stuff, and the real crux of it is that people buy from you for the why. I just saw a thing recently about where people had to give like their mission statement. You have to give your mission statement, and you know that's really what it's about. Is my mission statement is about you know my life, just about having a good time, about enjoying myself, about living, and you know the the being open on the showing what I do and being transparent and all that stuff. That's easy for me because it's just who I am. You know what I mean? And honestly, part of it's learned though too, because I used to kind of be in a shell and you know had issues with public speaking and all that kind of stuff. But with anything else, it just practice. It helps with that a lot. So
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, on branding, it's kind of like we're talking about different kinds of businesses, right? Like
right,
there's not collectors of IKEA furniture,
right,
right? And so
right,
and so their
right,
mission
right,
their mission statement's different. It's like we're going to make one might argue not really very easily assembled
right,
like furniture at a decent price and make it accessible to everybody. And
right,
that's their claim. And so if people like go to IKEA and purchase their stuff, it's because they align with those business statements, right?
right.
But
Yep.
with collecting, like the story of GEC or Case or any of those companies,
Right,
K-Bar, like they have a story and an ambiance behind them, and even in a production sense, people are buying from them because of their legacy or because
right,
of
right,
their
right.
history,
Because of
and
who they are.
yeah, and it's no different than in knives, where you're really wanting to use your money to support people that at least have an ideology or a product that represents something that they admire.
Right. Oh yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
so it makes it really difficult if when you're branding yourself that nobody ever knows what that actually is.
Right. Right.
And so I at least in my experience, I've always thought that who you get online with Nick Huff is actually only a small portion of the depth of who you are as a person. And
Oh sure.
I don't
Absolutely.
and I don't mean that in a bad way, because I loved you. Like I loved your work. I thought
Right.
that you were really charismatic, you were knowledgeable and everything, and very personable. And then when I met you in real life, you're like a larger than life entity in person, right?
Right.
And I'm not just blowing smoke. Like I really do admire you.
I appreciate that.
And so like if anybody listening to this thinks that Nick's work is up your alley and everything, just remember there's a lot more to him when you get to actually talk to him, one on one, and
Right.
see all the different stuff that he's into. That you are actually investing an awful lot in a person that just really you are taking your knife making and your experiences and everything to a different level, and that's what I appreciate about you.
Right. I'm supporting my family with it, so it's important to me to you know for one to just be real and to be you know to be truthful about everything, or at least you know try to be out there and present a product that's I can stand behind, and and stand behind it when mistakes are made, because the truth is that's the reality. Life is real, life is rough, and not everything's perfect. So I make mistakes, and I stand behind them and fix up what I need to. So
Yeah. Well,
you know.
and I think one thing about your personality is that you're very thoughtful, right? It's not just like
Right, right, right.
I think that some
I grew
people
up in Iowa. That's part of it.
all you
People,
have.
I've even said this on a podcast before, but people from Iowa, you can go to Home Depot, and somebody will like help you find all your stuff and help you check out and help you load your truck, and then you turn around and look, and they're walking back in the store to go shopping because it was just you know some other Iowan in there that was like, you know oh yeah,
Maybe
that's
it's
some
the
funny
farming
stuff.
community. Like you just have a whole lot of
Yeah,
time
yeah, yeah, yeah,
in between corn and cows and things to think about ideology.
yeah. Yeah, well, my mama raised me right too. My folks brought me up to, you know, not be a jerk, and although I spent a lot of time doing that, um, I spent a lot of time doing a lot of stupid things. But I learned a lot from all that. So that's what's gotten me where I am now.
Yeah.
So
When I think that's
yeah,
that's one thing that's interesting about having many faces in a lifetime, right? Is like when you
right,
transition from one period of your life to another, you change, because if you're on a
right,
trajectory to constantly reinvent yourself, then those past experiences, I mean, they either break you or they make you, right?
right, right, right.
And
Well, I'm a slow learner too, so I had lots of lessons that were like, to beat into my skull. Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why I was a slow learner on some of that stuff, but man, oh man, just literally just like being able to just go somewhere, just go to an event, and not just like hide in the corner and hang out on your phone and not talk to anybody. To like just get out there and present yourself, because you know, people that do it well make it seem easy, but it's not always easy, even if it seems easy. You know what I mean? But it sure makes for a more enjoyable time. You know, and you definitely make better interactions, better connections with people. So
yeah,
that's kind of where I'm at. That's kind of where I'm headed now. My whole thing is, Mikey loves this. I mean, he loves it when I say this, but I'm like, I'm not building knives, I'm building relationships. You know, I'm building a life for me and my family, and just enjoying myself. So
yeah. Well, and I think that there's a lot of people that get frustrated with life because things don't happen the way they want, or maybe they have
yeah,
an entitlement, like things.
right,
I'm doing this, like it should be working, but
yeah,
I think that when you really analyze the fact that if you don't like an outcome, you got to change the way that you're addressing something.
right,
Um, I don't like. There's people that I don't know. It's hard. It's a maturity thing, right?
right.
Like,
Well, it's perspective is a lot of it too.
yeah,
You know, because to be honest, that's where a lot of my perspective has changed. It's just the fact that my belief is, that I mean, we're just bacteria on a rock. We're just hurtling through space. You know, I mean, think about how many close calls with comets and stuff that we have. Um, there's more of them than we even realize. There's some of them they don't even tell us about because there's just nothing to do with them. And there's fun. It's funny because there's times I'm like in the grocery store, and I'm just like, what if it happened right now? You know what I mean? But by the same token, that also makes me like, man, I have odd philosophies, and part of it's just risky. Part of it's, there's a commercial where the dude says, "You're just cavalier with your finances. You're cavalier with your personal finances." Like I'm getting ready to leave for um, Sturgis tomorrow night, and you know, like I'm not in a position to go right now. I got stuff going on, and I'm busy, and the kids are getting ready to go back to school and stuff. But man, you know, not going is just almost not an option. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to miss out on all the fun. It'll be important and beneficial for just meeting people and having meaningful interactions, with people. Um, and again, a comet could hit tomorrow. It could hit in a week, and if I don't go, I'm just going to regret not going. You know what I mean? Um, and a lot of even the knife making has been like that, to where I had my own business. Um, I tattooed for years, and just I enjoyed that. Um, but the knife making was something new, and it really it really got in my head. So to be able to just transition and start doing knives full time, because that's how much I loved it. I knew that's where I was headed. Um, I just had to make crazy sacrifices and stuff, but none of it seemed like sacrifices to me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It seemed easy. Um, it's the paradigm shift. It's where your brain, I've taken on a new, whole new classification of where I'm at, of where my life is at, and where I'm headed. And to be able to do that and enjoy what I do, but then still learn how to live and enjoy life. Uh, that that can't be. You can't pay for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I'm having the best time. I really am having the best time, and it's so much fun. Uh, I heard Dan talking about the other day. He and I argue once in a while about, there's a saying: if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And it's funny because Dan's like, that's bullshit because you work harder than anybody. He's like, you do real work, and I'm like, I do, but man, I love it. I love every minute of it. I just can't get enough of it. So, and it affords me to be able to, you know, to live, enjoy. It affords me to be able to hang out with my family and spend time with my family. And that's more important than almost anything. So, uh, yeah, it's just absolutely a blast.
Yeah, I've worked in a lot of different things in my life so far, and I have to say, like, working for yourself is one of the most terrifying and reassuring things that you can do, right? Because
Right.
if people want to be a master of their own destiny, they have to realize that your nose is always the closest to the grindstone.
Hmm.
Because it,
Hmm.
like, going back to, if you don't see the results you want, you have to change it. It
Yep.
really, you have to learn what pivoting is. Like, if this thing's not
Right.
working,
Right.
I
Right.
have to do
Yep.
something else, because if I
Yep.
don't, then the bills don't get paid, my kids don't eat,
Right. Yep.
so on and so forth. And um, the good thing about that, I think, is that once you really get comfortable with working for yourself, that you can start opening up a lot of doors that are just not available to you on, like, the 9 to 5.
Right. Right.
Because
Right. Right.
for a large portion of your life, you're beholden to another person to tell
Yep.
you exactly what it is that you're going to do.
Yep.
And you get your little widgets out of it, and they pay your bills and everything, but then you're just
Right.
you're just a widget
Yeah.
producer. And I mean, I'm
Yeah.
one of those guys. Like,
Right.
I got a kid with a heart condition, and she
Yep.
requires widgets to pay for the enormous amount of things that she
Right.
needs widgets for.
Right. Yep.
So, the freedom to make knives and a motorcycle and all those things, that kind of dream of freedom does not exist in the world that I live in, but I also wouldn't trade the stability that I can provide my wife and kids for anything because of that. But like, I admire people like you because you every day that you can do what you do is a success story for the kind of person that is a full-time knife maker, right?
Right. Well, also every day you wake up is just, I mean, you got another chance to rock and roll and, do it again. So,
Yeah. Well, kind of on that note, I want to pivot back to how we met and talk a little bit about you. But so I think maybe it was about 4 or 5 years ago. You had posted up on Instagram is where I saw you that you were looking for an apprentice to help you at the shop because you were doing those production cowboys or the very
right. So yeah, I do my custom knife list is, the lead time has grown out so long that yeah, I was to a point where I needed to add, somebody to help me produce, a more cost-effective knife, whatever you want to call it, a version that more people could get, and it just put more knives out there, and provided was hopefully to provide knives, that someone could go and buy in the meantime, as they were waiting on the wait list, or if they just didn't want to wait, you know what I mean? So yeah, and to be honest, I was surprised to even get to that point, and that was a fun one because I met a lot of amazing people. I met a cat named Nick that, he was a rad dude. He came by a few times. You came by, and we talked, and that's how we met. I got to meet Brian that way by looking for somebody, and then I met Mikey. Mikey stuck around. Mikey's kicking butt. So
yeah.
yeah.
Well, and like I think that we met at a time when we were both. So you were expanding into this production cowboy. I think that when I met you, you had just gotten back the water jets for the first run of
Right,
cowboys.
like I think it was like the first batch was like 75 blades. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we were talking and everything, and it was clear that the vision that you had for what you wanted in an apprentice and the way you were taking your business was not compatible with the way that I thought about things. Right. And you gave me a piece of advice because I'd been a knife maker for a few years at that point. And I was just trying to figure out, okay, what's the next thing? Like how do I jumpstart this next thing from just making, knife shaped objects to, to getting more experience under my belt. And you said, hey, do your thing. Right. And focus on your trajectory basically. Right. And I'm not going to say I felt dejected. I looked at that as you're the first person in my knife making journey that really looked at me as having my own story to tell through my knives.
Right.
And that's the way that I interpreted it. I mean,
right.
You dole out a lot of advice, and it's like sage. But the way that I interpret it is like, you're like, hey, you're a person, you're a knife maker. You like, your ideas matter. Take that and run with it. Like, even if it doesn't work out between what we do, like, you still should do your thing, right?
Right.
And I took that to heart, I think, because I'm still in knives and I've done a lot of different stuff. But that was impressionable to me because I really think it was the first time I thought, hey, like I can do more than just be a good wingman to somebody else, right?
Right.
And not like,
well, you were the first person that came to me that was a knife maker. You know what I mean? I mean, I had other people that came to me that were just, they wanted to learn and they whatever. But, I mean, when you came to me, I considered you already a knife maker. You know what I mean? So, I mean, you had your own equipment. You'd made, you know how to make knives. And even at that time, you knew how to make knives. So,
Yeah.
So it's
And
just definitely a different ball game.
well,
And to be honest, you have a different style, and your style was worth. I thought, at least I thought your style was worth, you know, that you continue pursuing that. You know what I mean?
well, yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I don't think that I would have wasted your time if I didn't think that it was something that like your style was
right,
not
right, right,
something that I could have snapped into. But I
right,
kind of want to lead into that after we get a little bit more into your journey through
right
things
on.
because there is some aspects about your knife aesthetic that I want to expound on. Um,
Okay.
but I do agree. Like I have a different style. Like in my mind's eye, there are certain things that I've been chasing with knives that have just turned out to be me things, right?
Right,
And
right, right, right.
like there's just certain things in knives that everybody kind of says this is the aesthetic that I want to have or whatever.
Right.
And
Yep.
regardless, like I don't knock anybody for another aesthetic choice. It's mostly just that
Right.
there are things that when I close my eyes and I look at something,
Oh
um,
yeah.
then there's just a way that I see it. And
There's a lot of dudes that wear cowboy hats, but my cowboy hat looks different than everybody else's cowboy hat,
yeah, uh,
doesn't
yeah. I've always wondered, like, when you have to get a new hat, like, how difficult is it to actually find that
Oh,
thing?
the thing is, well, first of all, my hat is just a cowboy hat. So going and find a new cowboy hat, I got my guy Lalo down at Fincher's Whitefront in the Sportwear Stockyards. Um, you know, I just go down there and buy a hat. He steams the shape for me, and I build, the hat band. And from there, to be honest, when I get a new hat, it's horrible because they're so clean and they're so shiny and just like so perfect. And uh and to be honest, it's not authentic to like go take it out in the shop and stomp on it and you know burn it and rough it up and like what I mean. Like I can't fake it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. New hats are rough, but that's kind of the aesthetic of everything in my life. And that's where the knives end up the way they are, is just because I you know like my ultimate knife would be like a knife that you found in a barn. You know what I mean? I grew up in a small town in Iowa, um, and just that whole like vision of you know an old knife, and you're like, oh, check out this old knife, like that's just, I wouldn't want a shiny knife or a perfectly shiny and crisp. Like I just that part of it is not what's important to me. In fact, the fact that it's dirty, the fact that it's rusting, the fact that it's you know scratches on it, and it's not perfect, that's kind of the aesthetic that I enjoy. you know uh, it's funny because I actually I made a knife for Aquaman there. I I wore his sheath around for a while just to kind of break it in some. He's the same way. He likes stuff to look old, but he doesn't always have the same amount of time to you know to put into making his stuff look old. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll get into Jason Momoa here in a second, but well, because I'm interested in kind of like what he's doing, and you have several
mm,
people that you're associated with that have also had Jason's eye, and so
right.
I kind of want to talk about that. But so you grew up in Iowa, and then at
Mm-hmm.
some point in time you made it down to Fort Worth, Texas, right? Was that the
Made it
second?
to Texas. Yep.
And
Yep.
what brought you down here?
Oh, well, I got out of prison and I met this girl, and we started dating and moved in together, and she was crazy, and I was not equipped with the emotional skills or the social skills to just to be able to deal with. She was crazy, crazy, and so I packed up my stuff and just started driving, and just ended up in Texas. So that was 31 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Texas is a real hot place to go from the comfort of the upper Midwest to
The Midwest, yeah. Yeah, well, I mean that was part of it. It was I was tired of when I moved down here. It was in August, but I knew that going somewhere else, going south was going to be. I was just tired of dealing with winters. Winters. That's the thing is when people don't understand about winters, like especially in Iowa, is like winters. It lasts longer than obviously than it does down here in Texas. But the worst part is in the spring when everything's all dirty and slushy and nasty, and then it freezes at night, and it's just like a hellhole. And then the next morning, everything gets all your shoes are wet all spring. It sucks. I was in high school in the '80s, man. Everybody wore the high top Nikes, and man, you get your shoes wet. God, just ruin your whole morning. Walking to school, man, that's rough. So
oh yeah.
yeah, I was like, I knew the winters would be mellower down here, so it's part of what got me. And it's worked out well because, I met a Texas woman and we have a couple of kids together, and I absolutely love Texas, and especially now that I ride. I mean, Texas almost has a year-round riding season.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's good. When you initially moved down here, did you move immediately to Fort Worth, or did you like
I
bumble around
did. Well, I
anywhere?
mean, I was in the mid cities, and when I first moved down, I moved to. It's funny actually. The other day I went by there. So I moved down here, and just got a hotel room, and the next day I went and got a job at an apartment moving company, and like started working that day. And when I got off work that night, they would pay you for the day. You know what I mean? And I went that night, and I got a monthly or a weekly room at the Jolly Roger Motel in Euless. And the Jolly Roger used to have um, their sign was a pirate ship, and the sails it said Jolly Roger, on it. It ended up that place, they sold to I think I don't know, was it West End Apartments or what, Anyways, moved something else. The other day I was over there like 3 weeks ago. They're tearing the building down. Like that whole place is demolished now and gone, and that was my first place. But yeah, I've been to mid cities, Fort Worth. I've always been like right around. I actually lived um, like on the east side for a while, and then the wife and I actually before we got married, we lived like in downtown. Um,
Yeah.
like West Seventh area. Um, Remember where the grotto was down there on West Fifth? We used to live right behind there.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So, um, when you moved down here, is that when you got into tattooing, or had you been doing tattooing?
No, no, I no. Actually, no. I was 23 years old when I moved down here and wasn't doing anything. And I got a job at Jiffy Lube and actually worked there for years, like 4 years, 4.5 years. And actually enjoyed that. It was a really good time. Met a bunch of cool folks, and I was also playing in bands. So I got a couple of bands started and was doing all that stuff and just enjoying Texas. And uh, actually, when my wife and I met, we uh, we started dating, we went out and got tattoos, and um, the guy at the tattoo shop was like, "How come you're not tattooing?" I had a few tattoos, and I don't know. I don't know if he was looking for people or what, but um, yeah, that's kind of what started that whole thing. And I mean, I tattooed for 20 years professionally. So
Yeah.
yeah.
During the time that you were tattooing, what does your journey through tattoos look like? Like what was your like tattooing aesthetic? Did you use mostly black and white, or were you call it full color, or kind of what?
I did it, man. I did everything. I worked in shops that we did lots of walk-ins, so you had to do a little bit of everything, jack of all trades. I enjoyed mostly doing like you know graphic, bright color, really intense kind of stuff. Um, I mean, I tattooed. in a shop there in Hurst actually for years. I learned to tattoo over there and tattooed there for a while, and then tattooed in Fort Worth for a while in another shop, and then I actually ended up buying a shop and owned my own shop for 7 years. But to be honest, I did not enjoy owning my own tattoo shop. It kind of took the soul out of the tattooing. I really enjoyed tattooing and the people and just the tattoo itself. Uh, Beezer, knock it off. But where was I at? Oh, and then, but yeah, like I say, I didn't enjoy the owning a tattoo shop part. So I shut my shop down and went to work for Troll for a few years. Um, and then I ended up retiring from Bonehead Tattoo, which is actually the longest running tattoo shop in Fort Worth. Bonehead Tattoo on Camp Bowie.
Yeah.
Been there 28 years, 29 years now, something like that. So Cody Fuller owns that place. Really rad spot. So
Yeah. Yeah. Business ownership. Do you know Billy Jack Gunter, North Dallas location, and one in like Deep Ellum area?
Oh, right on. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the name per
Yeah,
se. So.
Billy Jack came from somewhere up north, I think, and moved down here and
Right,
then started
right.
doing tattoo shops. But like tattoo shop ownership, you basically have to herd cats, which is a bunch of like
Right,
a bunch of
right,
artists who are already flighty to
right.
begin with, and then deal with their
Yeah,
egos, and then the fact that you're an artist and
yeah.
also have an ego. And I can,
Hmm.
I haven't talked to him in quite a while, but
Right.
we used to he used to just like kind of shake his head, and I was like, I don't know whether he appreciated the artist ownership of like tattooing, or
Right.
whether he just wanted to actually just do the art side of things. So
Well, tattoo, and that's the thing too, is like tattooing has changed so much, you know, especially over the last, you know, 25 years. There's TV shows about it now. And it used to be, it's funny because that's one of Cody's favorite sayings is, you know, oh, we're on. My lovely wife. Um, yeah, so, tattooing used to be dangerous, used to be dirty, used to be, it was criminals and you know, drug addicts, and the military. So,
yeah,
but yeah, tattooing's definitely changed. And to be honest, man, you know, I really enjoyed tattooing and had a lot of fun, but I'm kind of glad I'm out of it. Partially just because of the life changes that I've had. Tattooing's at night, and for years my wife worked during the day. I tattooed at night. You know, we went years without seeing each other. So um, this affords me, to be home more and spend more time with my wife and my kids. You know what I mean? And not just be gone every night. That's the thing too. Is I worked every Friday and Saturday night for 20 years. Because you work in a you know you work in a street shop Friday and Saturday nights where the money's at. That's where the big money's at. So.
yeah. Well, and then so you were tattooing, and what got you into knife making?
Well, so I play in a band called FTW, and the guitar player, I've known him for years. He also tattoos, and we worked together for years. Well, he was having a birthday coming up, so I'm going to get him a birthday, a knife for his birthday because I knew my buddy Terry Shanks makes knives. But I was like, well, if I'm going to get him a knife, I'm going to get me a knife too. So I talked to Terry, and I got a couple of knives ordered up, and man, it literally was a shift the moment he handed them to me. Like he put them in my hand, and it just, everything changed right there. Uh, I just couldn't believe that he had taken a piece of steel and like through, like with fire and heat, you're able to like manipulate the molecules to change its state. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And to make it into something else, and then shaping it and finishing it out. It was just like I was just blown away by it, and the fact that it's arguably one of man's first tools. You know what I mean? Like it's one of the first things that man created. to be able to survive or to be able to survive better. Um, and it's just kind of crazy to think about. You're like, 'cause to be honest, you mentioned earlier something about like collecting, and Bob Lovelace used to say that, the knife maker doesn't get to decide whether a knife is used or collected. You know what I mean? You just make it and put it out there. The customer decides that. But I sure hope people are using my knives. You know, it's kind of what the knives that I try to make are knives so that people will use them. So.
Yeah. One of my biggest regrets from knowing you is that I didn't get on the books for one of your Huckleberry buoys before you're like 5 years out on your list.
Right.
Because that's like, if I look at that knife, like I saw yours that you carried and you let me handle it, and I have to say it's just like one of the, it's my knife, like it's my kind of knife. Like if
it's my favorite knife.
Yeah,
I mean it is. I still carry it every single day. But one of the things when I started making knives, that's one thing that I wanted to be able to do, was to be able to do the leather stacked handles, and this one to have a saber grip leather stack, and just to be able to accomplish that, and just the knife itself, like it's kind of fits my my overall aesthetic. Like I'm not a cowboy. I wear a cowboy hat, but I'm not a cowboy. I'm just a dipshit kid from a small town in Iowa. You know what I mean? I like to pretend I'm a cowboy. I like to do cowboy shit. Um, you know, uh, and it's funny because even when I'm out riding my motorcycle, that's all I can think about is, you know, how the cowboys travel, how people travel on horseback to explore and to, you know, that's some pretty wild stuff. So
yeah. Well, I mean, no, I totally agree. I have a tumultuous relationship with motorcycling because my right before I was born, my uncle died on a motorcycle, and then like my mom she was a little bit leery about that. I mean, she had a motorcycle when she was a kid and everything, but when I never got an opportunity really to ride other than like moped stuff. I had a few of those, and then I kind of just got into responsible mode where, like, I don't know, like my prefrontal cortex, I think, was developed out a little bit sooner than the 25 age. But so then, I was going a little wild, and I was like, you know what? Like I was going through a divorce. I was like, motorcycle sounds cool. Like I'm going to like look at it and everything, got started dating my wife now, remarried, and then my stepson died on a motorcycle 4 years ago, which is, the Levere and Son knife code name. And I don't know that, like, if I ever decided to get into motorcycles again like that, it would probably be the most selfish thing I could do, because my wife has such a hard time with it.
Because
one of her best friends, like a neighbor that was a best friend to her growing up, also, I guess he hit some debris that was on an exit ramp and died that way. So I don't know. It's like, it's weird because like with motorcycles, I appreciate, and I think that most people who understand the culture understand that is probably one of the most free forms of propulsion, that you can have. It's like the you listen to Highwayman or something like that. You're like, yeah, that's where it's at, right? That's freedom. But then there's the other side of it too, where it's like there's every day you just don't know, and that's, I think, probably that's probably
Hey, Chol died on his 44th birthday. And he never rode a motorcycle.
Yeah, well,
you could get hit by a bus tomorrow, walking across the street. You know what I mean? Like there's so many other things to be worried about, or to be afraid of, that I just I don't let the fear of motorcycling deter me, because you do. You're traveling 80 mile an hour down the road. It's real hard to not just like look down and be like, man, I built this thing. Like I'm the one that put this together. I'm the one that, so yeah. But like I say, A comet could come out of nowhere. We could all be gone in a flash.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's one of the things about life in general is that there are so many things that you can be scared of. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been like hunting where I've had like really, really close calls with nature.
Right,
You
right,
know,
right.
I mean,
Yeah, hell yeah.
I've been out in
You go out in nature, you're gonna have close calls with it for
yeah,
sure.
and
Yeah.
and I don't know what about my mentality when I've been hunting and fishing is like, this is more the scales are even because I'm just there
Right.
with primitive tools and things like that, maybe a boomstick and a knife and whatever and whatever I was able to backpack in, and somehow that's more safe than being on a motorcycle. But whatever that logic ends up being,
Right.
it's still like I appreciate the motorcycle culture, and I think that something that I see
Right.
in your knife aesthetic is that when you're talking about things that look like used, like somebody put themselves into it,
Right.
that's what I think of when I look at your knives.
Right. Right.
And like there's only one way to get that age or the patina, right? The provenance is what is it, like the provenance of a knife or other things that are used in ephemeral is that they have to actually be put to use in order to have it.
Right.
And so
Right. Right.
so that's interesting to me, and that's part of the concept that I've noticed with so Jason Momoa. I've noticed he's had you do stuff, Terry Shanks do stuff, right, and then
Hmm.
Neil Kamimura
Right.
and a few others, and it seems like well, the thing that I appreciated about him pulling in knife makers that kind of align with his aesthetic is that he's really elevating the handmade knife craft to a different, more visible level. Because
Right.
if you think about it, like there's a lot of knife makers that have props and things like that they fed into the industry over time, but Jason does a good job, I think, of representing the makers that he collects or uses inside of
Right.
how he expresses it, in his social media and everything. He's not afraid to say, hey, like I'm going to reach out and select people that I want to use their goods or whatever.
Right. 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 Right.
And so that's always been interesting to me. Like, do you think that did you ever think that when you were like developing your aesthetic and making knives and everything, that would be the trajectory that some of your work took, is to be in Hollywood and everything?
Oh no. Oh no. 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 Not at all. In fact, I mean, it literally was just the opposite. It was like internal. It was what makes me happy. You know. Um, when when somebody's like, "Oh, hey, let me see that knife," I like to pull out my knife and show somebody my knife and have it be, you know, gnarly and like it shows that it's been used. It shows that it's worn. It shows that that it's been around for a while. It shows all that stuff. Um, it's funny because people send me knives every once in a while. I'm sure you've had this happen. People send you a knife and they're like, "Oh, this was my uncle's K-bar. Can you like fix it up?" And I'm like, "Yeah, zing zing, sharpen it right up. There you go." And they're like, "Oh, no, no, no. I want to like that, take that rust spot off, and that, and where it's all dinged up on the spine right here." And it's like, man, that knife earned those badges. You know what I mean? It earned that look. And for me to just like sand that off of there, that's not what I want to do. There are probably somebody else that will do it, but I don't want to do it. You know what I mean? And I guess that just gets me back to where, once I get something looking old, I want it to look real. I want to keep it looking old. So
Yeah. Well,
hell, I don't wash my pants. So I
uh,
want to keep them looking old.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
uh, Yeah,
You think I'm joking?
no, I mean, I really don't. I know you well enough to know.
No, I'm just kidding.
You gave me a pair of like Levi jeans at some point in time. I tell my wife they're my lucky jeans because like whenever I wear them,
Oh, nice.
whenever I wear them out in
Right.
the shop, I always feel like I'm on point and I'm channeling my inner Nick Huff.
All right. Hell yeah.
But I'm glad I got to him
That's
before
great.
I'm glad I got to him before you started using them because they would have been tore up by
Right,
the time.
right. No, I just tell you, I had no idea that any of that kind of stuff would happen. And to be honest, every time something like that does happen, like every time I meet, I mean, I don't want to say like celebrities, but like I'm blown away by all the people I meet. Like I'm friends with, you know, people that 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 hardly anybody else knows. You know what I mean? Um, and then I know other people that are celebrities, but it's just I don't know. It's weird because most of the time when I meet people like that, like meeting Jason Momoa, he was the most amazing dude. You know what I mean? Like if nobody knew who he was, you would still want to meet him. You know what I mean? You still want to meet him and hang out with him because he's just rad. You know, and it's funny because a lot of the people I meet that are celebrities or famous or semi-famous, um, most of the time if I'm cool with them, it's because they're just such great people, you know. And that's really where it's at. So it's just meeting people and just making the connections.
Yeah. Well, and man, I think that at the end of the day, people who are popular are just people, right?
Right, right,
And
right, exactly.
it's difficult because you have, man, they get like Jason gets inundated with just so many people
Hmm.
that want to be in his business all the time,
Right.
right?
Yep. Yep.
It's not. I'm sure it's nice for him to be around people that are just interested in being genuine people and not like what is that ulterior
Right.
motive?
You know
Um,
what Dimebag Darrell used to say?
what?
Said treat famous people like they're normal, and treat normal people like they're famous. I mean that's where it's all at, man. Everybody likes to hear their own name, And I've made a really, dude, I'm so bad at it. So bad. I'm 54 and I'm so bad at remembering people's names. And to be honest, this year in February, I went to Mama Tried, and for some reason, I just had some sort of like shift where I was just like, I need to start remembering people's names. You know, a perfect example is there was a cat named Matt Stout. The Stout Boonie bikes. He builds like mini bikes that are amazing. Um, but I mean, I knew Matt for like 4 years and saw him everywhere, but I just, I never remembered his name. You know what I mean? And like, I was just like, man, this is ridiculous. Like, I see this guy everywhere. I see him in Daytona. I see him in Milwaukee. I see him in Sturgis. You know what I mean? I see him all over the country all the time, and I can't remember his name. Like, it's almost inexcusable. So I've made a conscious effort this year to like really try to grasp, get on people's names because, like I say, man, treating, I when I run into people and they remember me and they remember my name, I mean, like I say, your own name is your favorite word. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
everybody's the same way, man. So yeah, I've made a real conscious effort to try to do that because I mean that's just to me that's something that seemed like it was important enough that I need to get my ass in gear and you know figure it out. And it's been fun. It's actually like doing word association and association and just trying to like you know because I know you've done it before. You've like meet somebody and like as they say their name, it just you know it's like as soon as they're like, hey, I'm John, blah 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 blah, I do and you're like, I've lost it already. Like it's gone. That's
Yeah.
just inexcusable. That's
Well,
lazy, is what it is.
yeah.
So
Well, it's my mind works in a way where if there's something I have to remember that's um beyond like a person's name in order to be able to recall it sometimes.
right.
And it's like I've noticed it at knife shows where people come up and introduce themselves and everything, or maybe
Right.
like, or they'll say, "Hey, we've talked online." I'm like, you know what? I said, I feel bad. Like, first of all, just understand that I feel bad, but I don't know who you are, right?
Right.
It's at a knife show, and everything's going on all at the same time, but
Oh yeah.
it's really no excuse. Like I'm reminded, my parents, well, my dad was certified to do some testing for watches that went over to Desert Storm back in the
Okay.
90s. They had tritium cores for their
Right. Right.
watch
Right.
faces and stuff, and so they had
Yep.
to be tested in order to get military contracts. So it was a
Right.
Canadian and Swiss company. And anyhow, so they would test these watches in a laboratory, and get the numbers back, and they'd have to pull all the watches that didn't meet standard for
Right.
tritium leakage, right?
Right.
And then those packages had to be packed and shipped at a military approved shipping company in New Jersey, right?
Right.
And so every once in a while, my parents would like pack up, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of watches, and
Right.
and we'd have to ferry them over to this place in New Jersey to ship them out. And this shipping yard had a guy there that ran security, and he was an old timer. He'd wear like
Right.
iron slacks and a tucked in shirt and everything. He was
Right.
probably World War II, right?
Right.
And he would remember everything about a person. Everybody.
Right.
He used to tell my mom like I could remember everybody's name, rank, and serial number from the military, every single one, and he had a photographic memory.
Wow.
And so there were times when we would roll up to this his security booth or whatever, and he would say, "Oh, my mom's name and everything," and they would just talk like they were old friends.
Right.
And my mom would bring him like cookies and other stuff just to like tide him over. And sometimes we'd see
Sure.
him every week, and other times it would be a few months to a year or more,
Right.
depending on what surplus needed to be sent over to troops and everything. And that was always something that impressed me, that
Right.
somebody could, not only that they had the capacity to, but they cared enough, even though they might only see a person one time, to remember who
Right.
they
Right.
were,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And
Oh
and
yeah.
be able to recall it. It's a talent that I don't possess. But I do feel bad if I don't remember somebody's name.
I think I've had enough head injuries I mean, that's part of my excuse. So, you know, yeah. But yeah, I've made a conscious effort this year to change that, and it's actually working. I've made, um, there's been a lot of people this year that I've met, that people that I've known for a long time that I'm finally like, I got their name down. I got their name down. And then, a ton of people that I've met new that, yeah, so that's been
Yeah. Well,
fun.
yeah, and I think kind of on that note, we're all just people, in knives and
Mhm.
stuff. Like I haven't realized at some point in time my own, man, I'm not going to say celebrity. There's nothing about me or my knife making or my life that I think is any more than average,
Right,
right?
right, right, right,
But
right.
I am surprised sometimes, going to knife shows or other things that are knife people related, where somebody will come up to me and say, "Hey, blah blah whatever," and I was like, "Dude, I
You
had
get
no idea."
recognized.
Yeah, I had
Yeah,
no idea that anybody was following me. Like I have,
yeah.
maybe less than 1,000 people on social media that I
Right,
have actually going to my stuff. I've seen some people who have
right,
posted
right,
on
right.
on friends posts about the podcast and listening to it, and I'm like, man, like I don't even know. Like I just do this kind of just
Right, right, right.
because it's
You're
something
doing it
that
for you.
yeah,
I
and
mean, really,
yeah,
that's where it's at. Yeah.
oh yeah, my wife will tell me
Yeah.
like this is something that's really interests me, so I keep in it, right?
Right. Right.
But I mean, I think the same thing. Like it humbles me sometimes to realize that like the things that I put out there into the universe are things that people attach themselves to and
Right.
appreciate. And
Right.
I
Yeah.
think that not only is it humbling, but it's profound in some ways, because just like you might not always realize the impact that you have on people just by saying something that is
Oh yeah.
sage or like like me. You spurred me on to do my own thing, and
Right. Right.
there's a
Right.
portion of me that always thinks back to that. Well, if he could without knowing me for very long, see something in me that he would encourage me, then
Right.
like I should be able to see something in myself that spurs me on to continue down that path.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, I mean, so that's I think a big piece of it. Um, when it comes to motorcycling, when did you get into motorcycles, and kind of what what keeps you going on that other than just like the open road and these events and things?
Uh, well, I mean, you know, when I was a kid, my granddad had motorcycles and three wheelers and, all kinds of motorized toys. So we grew up messing around with that stuff. And when I was 12, I got a motorcycle for Christmas. I got a Harley. It was a 125, street bike. Um, and I just rode the dog snot out of it. Winter times, I mean, it didn't matter. I just rode it. Never did any maintenance to it. It just never stopped running. Uh, that thing was a lot of fun. But then I years later, I mean, I rode dirt bikes. I actually raced dirt bikes. I did that after I moved to Texas. I raced dirt bikes for several years, doing off-road stuff, cross country, hare scrambles, that kind of stuff, enduros, um, and not, you know, just as fun, not any kind of professional capacity or anything. I was just out there having a good time. I wasn't any good at it, I just loved it. And then like God, I can't remember what year it was, but like just recently, like it was 2019, Terry Shanks that I got the knives from um, gave me a motorcycle. He had one in his driveway, and he had another motorcycle he was running that just had one that was sitting around and wasn't running. He was like, "Man, why don't you ride this thing around a little bit?" So I rode it some, and then it wasn't legal, so I was like, "Man, I need to get this thing registered. Let's go get this thing registered." And he just brought the title over and signed it over to me. He's like, "This is yours now. You know, taking care of her." Her name was Jolene, and I kept the name because I mean, what am I gonna do? That's just a cool name. So although she's not named after the Dolly Parton song Jolene. Although everybody thinks that, and I love that song too. So I sing it to her as we're going down the road. But that's not that's not who she's named after. So
Yeah, I've any like there's a guy who had an old square body Chevy down the road from us in our
right,
neighborhood, and his truck is named Jolene on the back. And
no
anytime I,
kidding, right on,
yeah, they moved out from the neighborhood recently, but every time I drive by his car, I'd think about you.
right on, right on. Yeah. Well, it's funny too, because like you're asking like what keeps me going, man. I mean, honestly, dude, I love, like I say, man, I have my perspective on life and on this is, that we are just bacteria on this rock and we're just hurtling through space. It's random as can be. And, like you said, being on a motorcycle, it's uh, one of the simplest, you know what I mean? But like open um, ways of propulsion where, I mean, I'm just precariously perched atop of it, and just wherever I look and wherever I twist the throttle, that's where it goes. And um, man, that's really what it's about, man. I really just enjoy riding. Like when I'm riding, I'm looking, I'm kind of just, I look as far ahead as I can, and I'm just like, you know, I'm literally propelling myself through space. You know what I mean? So uh, I love camp. I love camping. That's the thing is too, guys. I love being outdoors. I love camping. You know, all that kind of stuff. And that's part of the motorcycling that I really really enjoy. Is I get to just enjoy like riding all day, and then I just you know find a creek or something somewhere, and I'm like I just set up camp, and man, that's the best. Like it's like I say. So my buddy Spook says that I can't remember. I'll paraphrase, but what he says is basically like when I was 12, I rode a bicycle around all over town, pretending it was a motorcycle. Um, just out exploring the world. And now here I am as an adult, and I'm, you know, ripping around on a motorcycle, pretending I'm a 12-year-old on a bicycle, you know, exploring the world around me. I mean, that's really like, what's around the next corner? What's down that road? Let's go up that mountain and see what's up there. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, and that's something like there are people in this world who uh, look at the country or like the roadway or whatever or land as like flyover towns, right? They're just like nobody
Right.
cares. And I've always been the kind of person that drives everywhere. Like if I
Hmm.
have to fly for business, it's one thing, but if I
Yeah, yeah.
if I travel, I want to be able to drive it, and I
Yep.
really hate just going through interstates because same old, same old. You go through 20 all the way out to
Yeah.
South Carolina, you've basically seen everything because it's all pretty
It's
much the same.
Cars.
Yeah, and
It's the movie Cars.
yeah,
Watch the movie Cars. You've seen it. You've seen Cars,
hmm
right? You remember that
yeah,
movie?
yeah,
So my 17-year-old was, at that age, right when that movie came out, that he watched it nonstop. So I guarantee I watched that movie 6 or 7 thousand times. We would watch it 4 or 5 times a day. Like the second it was over and the credits would start, he would just start it over,
yep,
and it would go right to the beginning song. And I mean, I knew every word of it. I know every part of it. But what's fun is it's a great movie. You know, they got these beautiful, beautiful little towns where, you know, Bob owns the tire shop, and you've known Bob your whole life, and everybody gets their tires from Bob. And Bob raised his family on that tire shop. And the same thing with you know what I mean? Like all the businesses in town are what made it happen. And the people would come through, and that was it. Well, then they built the interstate. Now there's a bypass and there's an exit ramp, and they put a gas station out by the freeway, so nobody goes into the town anymore. And it kills the town, it kills the businesses, it kills the people. You know what I mean? It just kills the heart of the whole thing. And it's just crazy because I like, it's such a dumb, like it's a kids movie, but it's such a big, deep message. Um, and I love riding out west. So every time I'm like out in the mountains, out in New Mexico and Colorado and all that kind of stuff. You look around and it kind of reminds you of that movie. But yeah, you go into like little towns, and that's the thing too is like you go into a little town and don't go to the 7-Eleven. If it's big enough that it's got a 7-Eleven, don't go to that gas station. Go to the first gas station on the edge of town. Where it's just got you know some dude working in there. You know what I mean? Like you got to go to the local spots and really see that. And that's it's a way better way to see. I was just realizing last night the wife and I watched. Pee Wee Herman died. Obviously, everybody knows
hmm
that,
yep,
which is really sad. I was a big fan of Paul Rubens, um, but the movie that he did, like after not Big Adventure, but the one he did later with Joe Manganiello. That's we watched that last night, and that's it's such a great movie about like Pee Wee lived in a little bitty town, and Joe tells him, man, get out there, get on the open road, live a little, and just the adventures that he has. Like, man, that's literally what I'm doing. But I'm, you know what I mean? Just I don't know what how I got lucky enough to be able to do this. I'm pretty stoked that I am.
yeah. Well, I've lived both on like the straight lace side in my previous marriage, and then well, I've always been a hillbilly. I mean, I grew up in
Right.
the Appalachians, so I mean,
Right on.
I I think I pretty much just faked my way through straight lace, like wearing
What?
polos
So
and
where are
stuff
you
like that.
from? Are you not from Texas also?
No, I moved down to Texas when I was 18, but I was originally
Okay.
from a really really small town in the Appalachian Mountains in Pennsylvania.
From Pennsylvania. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so
I'm
yeah.
going. So I'm going to the. So I'm going to Brooklyn in September,
Mm-hmm.
and I've never been there. So last year or 2 years ago, I went. So I've been to like most of the United States, um, but as far as the East Coast, I've been to Florida, I've been to North Carolina, been to Georgia. I've been to Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, that kind of stuff. 2 years ago, went to Virginia, West Virginia, or West Virginia, Virginia, and North Carolina were all firsts for me. So in September, we're going out to Georgia and then all the way up. So I'm going to get to go through Pennsylvania, go up through, all the way up through everything up to Brooklyn. So that's gonna be interesting. And I'm a big fan of just, I mean, just that little bit that I got to ride out there. Those mountains are beautiful out there. They're
Yeah.
different. They're different than like the Rockies. Yeah, I'm stoked about it. So
Yeah. Well, the Appalachians are ancient mountains, right? So
right,
like
yep,
the way that the subduction plates work on the
yep,
continents, the Rockies and stuff are new geologically
right,
compared to the
right,
Appalachians.
yep,
So they've had time to wear down from erosion and stuff, but you're
right.
actually going further back in geological history by riding through them
Well, and
and
they were
whatnot.
built differently too. So
Yeah.
you know what I mean? They're
hmm
completely different. Yeah, it's amazing out
Oh yeah. Well, the thing I appreciate about that area of the country is that the flora and fauna, like just the
there.
nature
Right,
itself is just so, it feels so pristine. Um,
right,
and
right,
not pristine in I guess in the sense that I feel that way out west further, but it's, I'm trying to think how to describe it. There's a lot of like gullies and gulches and cricks and
right,
things
right,
that
right, right,
just
right,
they
right.
just seem like you
Hey,
could.
dude, I grew up in Iowa, and it seems like it's just flat there,
Oh yeah.
but Iowa is absolutely beautiful too. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You have to search out some of those cool spots a little bit more than, you know what I mean? But yeah, yeah, I get you. I get
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I mean it's just like right, it's like right around a corner you could have this like Ricketts Glen is a place that's up there that's just it's like a hiking trail type of area
Okay.
that you if you drove past it you'd never know it was there.
Right.
But humongous water features like old waterfalls and
Wow.
super old trees and little like sinkhole type of areas where the water's just
No
for
kidding. Right,
tens
right.
tens of thousands, 100,000 years have ripped through the stone features.
Wow. Right.
There's a place up near Wilkes-Barre Scranton area that's called Boulder Field that is
Right.
all from like small gravel all the way up to humongous boulders. It was a glacier.
All deposited from glaciers. Yeah.
Yeah, and you get to see all like the progression. You can actually walk over all these boulders. It's just that's all
Oh,
as far as you
right.
can like see and walk. It's just a bunch of boulders, and you can vault over them all the way up to the where the glacier receded, and there's all like raw rock that's just like cliff
Right.
face basically. And it's stuff like that where you can miss it in a second if you don't take the right turn, you don't search for it. And that's kind of like,
Right.
I mean, that's a lot of places for sure, but Pennsylvania, it just seems like there's some areas that are a little bit more accessible. Like you can just
Right.
by turning off a main road get to a place like that, and then you can spend a lifetime trying to enjoy it.
All right.
I mean, but things are
Yeah.
real slow up there. Like, I mean, I grew up in the '90s,
Right.
but I really felt like I grew up in the 1950s because I can still
Oh,
remember.
right.
I
Right.
still remember.
Yeah.
My folks had a black and white TV
Yeah.
for a while. I mean, we had an antenna and we got 3 channels. Everybody knew
Right.
everybody in town. I mean, I was telling my wife the other day that you can, like, I was trying to give her a frame of scale of how small this
Okay.
town was I
Right.
lived in, and I was like, it's a few 100 feet long. It's not. It's just a bunch of,
Right. Right.
and that is town, and we happen to live
Yeah.
in it.
Yeah.
And my grandparents and great grandparents had lived there for quite a while. So I was third generation to grow up in that town.
Right.
But it's real cool. And when are you going to ride your motorcycle up through that area?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't. It'll be interesting to see what your take is on it. But the old New England style country is a completely
Right.
different type of experience. In Brooklyn, when you go into New York and everything, you have those old boroughs and everything, and the culture.
Right. Yeah, and I've never been, so all that's
Yeah,
going to be new for me.
yeah, that'll be exciting. I mean,
Yep.
because you get to see it in a way that most people don't. I mean, you fly into it, you go from the
Right.
airport
Right.
to
Right.
a
Right.
taxi or
Yep.
something, and
Yep.
you don't get to see it. And I mean, the food is different on the outskirts. The people are different.
Oh yeah.
All that stuff. So yeah, I mean, I don't live there anymore, but man, there's lots of times where I pine for those old mountains and the
Right.
scene. And
Yep.
I think you'll really enjoy it. Especially, I mean,
Would.
you get to go through Amish country if you're driving up there.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And it's a completely different, like it's flat, kind of like Iowa is,
Yeah.
down there in the basin, and then you go up through the Appalachians and everything,
Right.
and it's a lot of very microclimates and
Oh,
cultures up
gotcha.
there.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty crazy. There's just it's similar to Texas in that you have a lot of different like microclimates, as it were,
Right.
and a lot of just real crazy cats, a lot of hillbillies. But yeah, I'll be interested to see when you actually get up there and after you're back, what do you think about it?
Right. Oh, heck yeah.
But that's a what I was trying to say earlier is that like I've lived on the straight lace side of things, and I've also just kind of fallen back into my rural I guess mentality and everything. And
Right.
one thing that I appreciate about like the kind of cultures that we're in is that a person is evaluated uh, by their value and their face value, right?
Right.
It's not about putting on airs and trying to manipulate people into thinking that you are someone that you're not, but you're genuine.
Right.
Like
Right.
tattoos and motorcycles and knife making and these type of things are really good indices to be able to suss out whether somebody's full of it or not.
Right.
And,
Right.
and that's what I
Yeah.
like. I mean, if I'm going to talk to you about something, and I want to be genuine about it, I really just kind of want to know that that I guess investing myself and my spirit and energy in somebody who can at least appreciate me as a person. And
Right.
it's really difficult when you live in cultures where you might say something and then automatically somebody's just going to be talking behind your back or
Oh yeah.
stabbing you in the back for some reason or another. And I just don't have time for that kind of thing.
What's really crazy is I've had an odd experience here the last couple of weeks. Is so I went to Run to Raton, and it's just this whole weird like series of events. But so I went to Run to Raton, and when the first Run to Raton was 2017, and in either 2017 or 2018, I was there, and they there's a video where a guy does a wheelie on a chopper, a really long front end, and there's a guy on the back of the bike with him. He's got a beer in his hand, and they do a big wheelie, and he almost falls over. He kind of hits a stop sign, like the concrete at the bottom of a stop sign, just barely clips it. Boom. And when that video came out, it went viral. I mean, it just like it was everywhere. Everybody saw it. Like it was insane. Um, but what's really crazy about it is I'm in that video. Like I'm in the very, very background at the very beginning, and I was stepping out from between my truck and another truck with my phone, getting ready to film, and I missed it. They'd already they nailed the shot they wanted, the one that went around. Anyway, so I shared it because I was in Raton. I've been every year. I was like, I'm gonna share this video. As of today, 669,000 views, which got me like 700 new followers, just in the last few days. And what's really funny is it's brought out, um, I mean, obviously there's with that many views, you're going to get a lot of comments, and it's got a lot of comments. But man, it's gotten to the point where it's gotten to the like the negative comments and the crappy, just the all the nasty stuff. And it's been kind of an interesting watch to see. see what kind of yahoos come out of the woodwork and having to deal with that because it affects you. It does. Whether you want to admit it or not, it does. It affects you. And then people say crappy stuff, and it's like it's just an interesting, it's interesting to watch.
Well, yeah, because you mean
People.
yeah, I mean they say like opinions are like buttholes. Everybody has one, and they
And they all
often stink. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and that's the thing. Like it's difficult in this interconnected world that we live in to try to not let negativity sidetrack you.
Right. Yep.
Right. And it seems like, man, I feel bad for our children in a lot of ways because
Right.
there is no, like, we have a foothold in reality because it's a foothold in the analog, right? It's like,
Right.
I saw Terry Shank post something up recently where he was like, like people like to run their mouths. I'm paraphrasing. Like people like to run their mouths or whatever, but there's several types of people in this world, like those who run their mouths and they get shut up pretty quickly.
No.
You can hold your own or you die trying, and it's like that's the way it is. It's like if somebody wants to get up in my face about something, then I can usually address that pretty quickly. But how do you do that with like cyberbullying or like people just infiltrating your world and then backstabbing you constantly? Like there's like it's like the subliminal and insidiousness of friendships and everything it's difficult to navigate in some ways because everything's done online. It's like my daughter can just like look. I mean, she had this problem where she was getting bullied in school, and she would just like sit and like look at her Instagram feed or these group text message or whatever, and see things. And it's like she couldn't just put her phone down. And I just walked in one day. I was like, "Why are you crying about?" And she's like, blah blah, this happened. I was like, you know what? You have one easy button for that. I said, turn that phone off and just live in the real world for a little while. I said, like the people who want to pursue you and be like do violence towards you, whatever, outside of your phone are the ones that you can do something about, right?
Right.
But if you're just like paying attention to living in this world of like cyber whatever, then it's totally fabricated. It brings out the worst in people because they feel like there's nothing that stops them from being rude
and we all do it, whether we want to admit it or not, but we all do it, but we curate, our environment. You know what I mean? A good example is Facebook, where like people go on Facebook and they're like, like everybody I talk to on Facebook agrees with me. Well, yeah, that's because you've blocked everybody that disagrees with you. You know what I mean? Or the friends of yours that say stuff that you don't like, you don't comment on their stuff anymore. Now it doesn't show up in your feed. So, it turns it into where now you've got a bunch of yes men, you know, and even I, I'm guilty of that, where I've got almost 20,000 followers, yet everybody's like stoked on what I do. You know what I mean? I don't really get a lot of negative stuff. I mean, I make my morning videos. And it's funny because as I travel over the country, people tell me all the time how, they're like, man, your morning videos, they inspire me. And and it's like, that's not why I'm doing it. I'm like, that's a benefit. I'm glad that it's working that way, but I'm doing it to remind myself, like, hey, get up, go get some stuff done. Uh, don't worry about don't worry about the voices in your head that are, you know what I mean? Don't worry about all the naysayers and all the crap, because none of that's important. So, but it's a neat benefit that it works for me, gets me up, gets me motivated, but it works for so many other people too. But again, like I said, it's also a curated group where now I got this, I posted this thing, it goes crazy, I got tons of shares, and now I get all these negative comments, and it's like we even us who grew up without cell phones are now shielded somewhat. Your friends list is literally that, it's your friends list, like you're the one that's in charge of it. People that you don't agree with, or people that are doing crazy stuff, people that are negative, you're like, I don't want to hear that, you just block them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's tough because like your daughter has to go to school. She can't necessarily get away from that stuff. So yeah. Because it's a tough world.
Yeah.
Definitely a tough world.
Well, yeah, and it's we don't live in the age anymore where you can get in fights and like
Right.
dust off and then be friends
Yeah.
again. Like everybody's like pulling guns on each other and calling the
Yeah.
cops
Yeah.
and everything like that. It's like, man, like
Yeah.
there isn't any real conflict resolution. It's just a bunch
Right.
of like, it's real catty.
Yep.
And so I don't know. I mean,
Mm.
but I mean, I don't know. Like that's the thing too. I mean, you're talking of 20 some thousand people that all see your stuff, and you're a focal point for them to get that information and everything. And then
Right.
one thing you say or one thing you post just like changes the paradigm and the way that they think about life. And some people just don't like that.
Right. That's true. That's
So,
true.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I am fortunate enough, I guess, that I don't have that kind of problem, because like sometimes it does irritate me when I see people that are just like my vibe is just like, man, it's like I'm live and let live. Like I just want people to
Right.
I'm like I'm a Jesus guy. Like I just want peace in the valley.
Yeah.
That's what I tell my
Right.
wife. It's like, I was built for war. Right. I mean, I'm
Right.
a hillbilly. I have had I've known of multi-generational feuds and things, and have
Right.
been roped into that stuff. And I just want peace in the valley. Right. And, even though I will get up in arms about stuff like I do just want peace at the end of the day. And I really try to fight for that now. Especially like, I'm not really built for getting into fights a whole lot anymore.
Right.
And I'm just kind of like, there's more things to life than just getting angry about things and whatever. And
Right. Yeah, for sure.
it'll ruin your day. Like your trajectory is set,
Yep.
and it'll ruin your day.
Yep.
And it's the same way, like, like as it ties into knives and everything. There's a lot of people that want you to make knives the way that they think that you should make knives.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's people that want you to conduct business the way that they want you to. And for the supporters, I'll say more than collectors, it's just supporters, people who are like vibing on your same thing, and want to see you succeed. They're there to help you succeed. And sometimes that's just a kind word or affirmations or whatever.
Right.
But I think though that, everybody else, it just is not really worth the time. Like you can't make everybody happy.
Yeah.
But kind of on that note, like so you have this aesthetic and everything. And I know when we were talking way back in the day, you mentioned about going through some of the was it the Texas Knife Makers Guild, and they looked at your knives and inspected them, and they weren't.
And that was in my, first year of making knives
Mhm.
too. So, there was a point where, again, like I say, I overreacted. I don't want to say they were right, but maybe it's just my ego saying that. But yeah, it was just I don't know, it was just a blow that I wasn't prepared for, and I overreacted. But like I say, I'm really glad that that happened the way that it did, because it really got me to see, um, the inside of it before I was in it. You know what I mean? Because as soon as it happened, so they turned me down, and I bitched about it, and I made a post about it, and I had a ton of people that hit me up that were just like, kind of what I told you. They were just like, man, just do you. Like what you're doing is cool. Do you. You know, you don't need them. You don't need, you don't need their justification or their verification. None of that's important. It's only important if you think it is. You know what I mean? Because no one's ever hit me up about a knife and been like, well, are you a member of any, they see the knives I make and they're like, yeah, I dig it. And if they, to be honest, it happens to me every once in a while. People are like, hey, I like this, but I want mine like a mirror polish. And I'm like, I don't do that. You have to have somebody else do that. I just don't do that. So.
Yeah. Well, and so, like, I mean, my knife experience has been, so I got into the Texas Guild,
Right. Yep.
and and then I got into the knife makers guild, like the big guild.
Right. Right.
And I mean, I don't know how I've portrayed that guild experience on the podcast. Really, I mean, I do appreciate
Right.
the fact that the guild represents a history, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Texas Guild is kind of like a smaller portion of that.
Yep.
But at least the idea for me is that I wanted to see if I could do it, but
Right.
being several years out from the experience, I have to say that the like being part of the guild anymore is not, you know, like you don't instantaneously make more money, and you don't get
Right. Right. Right.
you're not part of this like um, cadre that you just sell out of all your knives and everything like that. It's not like that. And so like for
Right.
me,
Right.
it's not really a gentleman's club.
Right.
And I will say that the detriment that I feel, if anything, is that I got a lot better at understanding how to make a knife, but I lost a lot about the reason why I was making the knife.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and that's something that I'm constantly in reinvent mode. Like, man, I never change.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I'm just constantly like, well, okay, what am I going to do next? What's interests me and everything like that. But I spent a long time focusing on a way to make a knife to fit into parameters that I could be judged on
Right.
by a small group of people that you know you at some point in time we're all kind of like the blind leading the blind,
Right.
right? You know, it's like, you know, you can't really fault me on this scratch when I see that the same scratch is being made on your stuff. And
Right. Right.
and
Right.
and
Right.
and that's where, like, you know, I think the exercise of being in the guild and whatnot, it helps you to like kind of step back and say, okay, well, like, is this something that is purposeful, right? Is this part of an aesthetic that
Right.
I'm trying to go for, or is it something that is based off of inexperience?
Right. Right.
You know, and there is a difference, I think.
Or just being lazy.
Yeah, or lazy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that there is a difference. There's a difference between being lazy and like you're good enough being just what it is. There's a
Right.
difference between an aesthetic choice and everything kind of has its place. And there's a difference between inexperience and
Right.
being a novice at something. And I really had to suss those things out, and it helped me to kind of curate that kind of idea in my head.
Right.
But in doing that, I also wondered sometimes if the way that I was making knives or the aesthetic that I chose or things like that are, you know, maybe not the direction that I necessarily want to take in like
All right.
like what I look for brand wise. Because like for me, like I like the idea of making real high, like a high end is the wrong word, but fine knives that look really good and clean
Right. Right.
lines and
Right.
stuff. But I detest the fact that nobody would ever use them.
All right.
You know, it's like,
Right. Right. Right.
and those are kind of intrinsic qualities, because like if you
You know,
make
maybe subliminally that's where I'm at. Right? Maybe, I mean, maybe that's where I'm at subliminally, is that I want people to use my knives so bad that I don't want to make them too nice. You know, you know what I mean? Because I do. I'm like almost sick at the thought of somebody like buying a knife from me and then just like putting it on a shelf and like, oh,
yeah, but well, I mean, and that's, you know, everybody has to. I think I'm gonna stop here and kind of retrace my steps in the fact that there are some people that don't think about it at all. I think that they just
right,
make and whatever is right. But I think that if you know, you have a lot of time on your motorcycle to think about things, and I kind of have like a neurotic tendency to overthink things, and I think that we think about that, like, so it's like what goes into life, what goes into knives, what goes into relationships,
right,
and how do you experience the full meal, right? And
right,
and I there's like there's a knife manufacturer up in Michigan called Bark River Knives.
yep,
And yeah, and the Stewarts and everything, they make a good knife for an affordable rate,
right,
but they're not flawless,
right,
right?
right, right,
And there's some people like online and everything that will just dig on them because
Right.
there's just something that isn't right, like the grinds aren't exactly symmetrical or whatever. And
Right.
there are some aspects of that I can understand where they come from, because some things
Right.
seem a little bit more blatant than others. But you know, you're paying $250 for a knife that's fairly big, that looks like I mean,
Right.
it takes a
Right.
while. Uh, it takes a while to make. They're expecting the quality of like a $1,200 or $1,500 knife for $225.
Right. 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 Right.
And like I have to wonder sometimes, like, I mean, they put knives in the hands of a lot of people,
Right.
and by far the supporters of Bark River are more than the detractors.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
And their prices have stayed very reasonable. The people who run it are genuine people, and
Right.
um, but it's not flawless, and it's not perfect. But
Sure.
you're not paying the price for that.
Right. Right. Right.
And
Right.
sometimes I wonder, like, if your price point is a little bit lower, if that changes the dynamic about how, like, whether there's more people that can use your knives or whatever. It's just like your production
Right.
cowboys. Somebody might not be able to wait, several years to get on the Nick
Right.
Huff
Right.
custom
Right.
list. But with a cowboy, it's more obtainable, and they get,
Right.
you're putting the same kind of aesthetic into something that's very reasonably priced. So, like, what
Right.
your cowboys are, is it top end is three hundred
Those are
dollars?
$300 on the website. Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a lot different than, $1,300 to $1,500 or whatever. I don't even know what
Right. Right. Right.
your custom prices are anymore. But
Right. Yeah. I mean, the tornadoes right now are about $1,000 or more,
mhm,
depending on, so
yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
And partially that's because of the lead time, you know, because I'm not the best. One thing that, occasionally I speak with people who are like, they expect because of what I charge, they're like, they're going to get this absolutely stunningly perfect knife. And it's like, well, that's not necessarily the truth. I'm not the best knife maker in the world. You know what I mean? Um, and again, my aesthetic, I'm not trying to make them so perfect that that they look that way. Um, but yeah, that's a lot of that has to do. And I got to be honest, man. Um, I don't know where I'd be if it wasn't for Spencer, because he's the one that told me about that. He's the one that told me about controlling your lead time with your prices, because I can see and I've seen it. I've seen other people do it. I've seen people charge $300 for a knife and then get, a year behind. They're still charging $300 for a knife. You know what I mean? And then get 2 years behind. You know what I mean? And you're never going to catch up from that. And you're still making, you get 3 years behind. In 3 years, you're still making the same money you made 3 years ago. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So, yeah, that's been an interesting one, because there's I get to a point where I hate charging what I charge. You know what I mean?
hmm
But again, I couldn't imagine, like, at one point my list was more than 40 weeks, and even that is an odd disconnect from, it's like I talk to you about a knife, figure out what you want to do, and I got it in my head, I write everything down, but then, it's months later, and your name pops up, and I'm like, all right, so what were we doing? What were we talking about? Like, I have to get back into that mode, you know. So yeah, and that's, to be honest, that's one of the things too, where Mikey and I want to expand, get a bigger place, get more equipment, get some more guys working for us, but you know, we just take it as it comes. We see
yeah,
where see where it goes. So
yeah. Well, what is your lead time as of today for custom work?
right now, so I blew up a couple of motors on the way home from Daytona, which put me, so my trips and all the traveling that I do, that's all in the lead time. You know what I mean? And it accounts for about 12 weeks of the lead time. But my lead time right now, so I got caught up some. So I'm probably about 30, between 30 and 40 weeks out right now on my custom list.
That's still pretty good to have
Right,
under was it under a year total. So I mean,
right,
and that's is that a fiscal year, right? I mean, you're like running, or I mean, that's a calendar year, right? It's like so it's like
right, right,
under a year for an order,
right.
all in. Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So to be honest, some of them, depending on the build, um, some of them end up being, like I say, it's right around in there about, um, like I say, it was 40 weeks plus, was getting to the where it was almost a year. But like I say, I stayed home from Daytona. Well, I got home from Daytona. I stayed home from the Mexico trip, and I stayed home from Bisbee, and man, I just worked like nonstop, crazy hours. Like I would literally work and then just like go in and sleep and then they just get up and work like just nonstop. So I actually caught up quite a bit on my list, um, putting in a bunch of work. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, a year is still pretty. I mean, that's good. I mean, it's not
right, right,
that's not so bad. And in the custom world, like when some people are getting lists that are as like 3, 4, 5 years out,
right, right,
and that's almost it's almost impossible to wait that long
right.
and still keep.
You can go and order a Randall knife right now, and it said I think it's 2029. It's a
Hmm.
5 year, 6 year wait
Yeah.
for one of those right now. So
Well, it's kind of like in the Polynesian islands and like Hawaii, you have those. I forget what the technique is, just for like the old school tattoos, where they use just
right
a.
where they do it by hand with the
Hmm.
stick and the
Yeah,
tapping.
yeah, and most of the good artists or whatever are like 4, 5, 6 years out on being able to do that, and like there's.
Right. Well, and the good ones that really do that stuff traditionally
Mhm.
don't tattoo on people that aren't, like the Samoan won't tattoo on non-Samoan.
Mhm.
They won't tattoo on non-islanders. You can't go out there and get a, Now there are people that that do that technique, but yeah, there's some people that, yeah, they're years out, and that's because they're in like, they have family clients. You know what I mean? They
Yeah.
tattoo whole families and stuff. So
Yeah. Well, and that's I think there's a cultural significance to that form of tattooing too. That,
right,
like,
right,
I don't know, in the world of cultural appropriation and everything, I don't care so much about that. But there are some like cultural sacred things that I appreciate. Like, um, I have a buddy who works at a vape shop that
right.
his cousin and their family lived in Hawaii, and his cousin
Sweet.
ended up dying, and
Right.
he went through the entire ritual of burial and everything Hawaiian style, right?
Okay.
And we were talking about it, and by the time he got done like talking about this experience, we were both like crying because I was like, that is
Right, right,
it's
right,
such
right, right.
a beautiful thing.
Right.
Like when
Right.
I was going through this process of grieving for a Christian passing and everything,
Mm-hmm.
and we think of death so much differently here, where it's like you'd be fortunate if you get awake and somebody celebrates your life versus like
Right.
the death
Right.
side of things. And
Right.
in that Hawaiian culture of remembrance and grieving actively and allowing that all
Right.
to like kind of leave your body, like rather than
Right.
storing it
Right.
all up. I thought it was the most beautiful thing. And like
Oh, good.
as time went on, I thought more about getting like tattooed and like that list and everything. And I was like, I just don't know if I could do it. And it's mostly just out of a profound respect for the way
Right.
that they think about life and death. And it's like, if you're not part of that, if you're not part of that lifestyle and you're not part of that culture and everything, it seems a little bit maybe disrespectful
Right.
to
Right.
try to like you put stuff on, like if it was just a normal tattoo and it was done in that style, I still think that would be real rad. But don't expect to
Right.
have like tribal tattooing and stuff on you that has cultural significance to them,
Right.
and then try to like, I don't know, fake your way through that. It's like you're either over there and you're in the culture and you embrace it, and then maybe you get invited to that, that circle, or not. But the kind of the idea is like in that wait list type of thing. I was like, maybe I try to get on somebody's books. But then so many years later, I've talked myself out of this. So it's kind of like, it's the same way with knives. Like you get on somebody's list and you want it 5 years from now. Like, dude, I don't even know if I'll still be alive in 5 years. I don't know if I want to think that far out. But yeah, a year's not bad. And I really prefer being able to make stuff and then be able to sell stuff versus having like long books or things. And I'm still trying to figure that out, whether I want to start accepting like have books that I can keep, or whether I want to just make what I make and then sell it. But it's kind of rough, because every time you make a knife and you're not making it for somebody, you got to figure out some way to hawk it,
Right.
And,
Well, but also on the other side of that too is what happens, is I guess I don't suffer from it so much, but I kind of do, where, I'll make a really amazing Texas tornado with, fancy wood and turquoise and, that I cast in clear resin and all that. And then, there's always the guy that's like, hey, that's really awesome, man. Can you make me one that's black? And it's real easy to like, make like 5 black ones in a row. You know what I mean? Like make 5 plain ones in a row. It's like, so, it's nice. Occasionally I do just, you just have an idea and you're like, I got to run with this idea, and not just stick with the list and do what everybody wants all the time. So.
Yeah, no, I get that too.
Yeah.
I mean, are you planning in this like path of, the semi-production with Mikey and everything, of doing any other models other than the Texas Tornado? Or
we're doing the Cowboy now. Yeah, definitely. I've actually got a couple of designs already put together, and yeah, we've got other stuff that we want to do. A couple of something like a little simpler, kind of a namesake kind of piece, and then other like mid-range stuff. But yeah, it's going to take more room, more equipment, more guys. At least the kind of vision I've got for it, because you know I don't know. It's funny because I keep thinking every once in a while about. I saw a documentary where Jerry Moen said, "You couldn't pay me to make you a custom knife right now," because he makes so much money from his production stuff. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's a toss up. I'm gonna make what I want, or I just make the same thing over and over. Do I just stick with what's working? So yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, and I don't, man. That is also an element of knife making that I think plagues the full-time knife maker a little bit more sometimes than the part-time.
Right.
Because like as a part-time maker, like if I don't want to do something, I don't have to do it. And it's not that I don't have to do it. It's that I could just like be so against the idea that I just like banish it from all form of thought.
Right.
And I can say, hey, look at this full-time paycheck. Like, who cares? Like, I can do what I want. But as a full-time knife maker, you don't like, you have the liberty, to say so. But that's money on the table that could go towards shop expansion or whatever.
Right.
And your ability to say no sometimes changes a little bit, and it has to be very severely weighed by all of your other dreams, aspirations, and bill paying stuff, And
it's funny though, because it's funny you say that, because I actually have several friends of mine that make knives that they go through these episodes where they'll call me up and they'll be like, oh man, this guy wants me to make him a hatchet, and I'm like, you don't make hatchets, like you tell them no. You know what I mean? It's okay to tell people no. I actually tell a lot of people no. Because I have to stick with what makes me happy. I have to stick with my aesthetic. Because I do have people hit me up that want me to make an axe. They like see them and they're like, oh, it'd be so amazing to have a a matching set of a Texas Tornado with a hatchet to go with it. And I'm like, I don't make hatchets. My neighbor came down one time a year ago and was like, "Hey, you should make custom golf putters." And I was just like, I could make anything. I like making knives. I barely, I don't even like making the sheaths for them, but I do. And I like making the knives, but I don't want to make golf putters. I don't know anything about golf putters. Would I have to like learn how to play golf and like learn, you know what I mean, to like know what was a good one and what was a bad one to be able
Hmm.
to make good ones? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Maybe I think about it too much. Maybe that's because, you know, I maybe people buy knives from me because I put that much of myself into a knife. You know what I mean? I couldn't imagine somebody making knives who just like, you know, they didn't have any care for it. They were just like, yeah, I'll make a knife, and I don't
Yeah. Well,
know.
the way I used to take orders that were just things that it wasn't past my skill set, but it was just a past where my mind was wrapped around something.
Right.
And
Yep.
when you make enough of your own things, you get an idea about how you need to make it in the shop. And
Right. Right.
I found that all these really unique type of things were they kept me from being able to make more of something, and I was spending all this time
Right.
making this specific thing, and it was the same price or not that much more than the I could have made more of something, right?
Right. Right.
So, it's like I made this. I got laid off for a while, and I made this Bowie knife out of an elk horn with
Okay.
quillion guard and everything,
Right.
and I had never made one like that before, and I did not charge much money at all for it.
Right.
And but it took me longer to do that knife, and yeah, I
Oh
learned
yeah.
something about it, but at the same time, I probably could have made in the same amount of time that I made that one off, I could have probably made 15 of something else that I,
Right.
even if not all of them sold, I could have made more money. And
Right.
what I've decided to do instead of me saying no, like it is a no for me,
Right.
but I try to guide, like I know enough people in the industry that I'm like,
Oh
okay,
yeah.
this is
Oh yeah.
not it's a no for me,
Right.
because I'm not going to do the as good a job as if you talk to this person,
Right. Right.
right?
Right. Right.
And that way, I'll tell them, hey, go talk to this person, tell them I sent you, talk to them
Yeah.
about that thing, and if they can help you out, that's fine. And then I'll usually talk to that maker and say, hey, buddy, like
Right.
I had somebody that asked about it. I just want to let you know that like you were top of my mind and everything. And so if they reach out,
Right.
maybe here's their contact information, and you know,
I hit that guy up, the guy that wanted the axe, that wanted the matching set with the hatchet, and I was like, you know, I didn't know. I don't know exactly who would do something. He wanted like an axe. You know what I mean? Like an actual like hatchet, not a take flat steel and make a hatchet shaped
uh huh.
thing. Like he wanted an actual hatchet, and I was like, man, find a hatchet maker, and I'll collaborate with somebody.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's
Yeah.
that's where the Texas Knife Maker Guild in that sense has been beneficial because I get to see
Right.
people, because Texas I think is like this epicenter for forging type of work, especially.
Right.
There's people who make those like ball peen hatchets
Oh
and
yeah. Yep.
things all like now, and if listen, I tried to make one of those ball peen hatchets before, and I was beating on that with a nice anvil and everything,
Right.
and I barely
Yeah.
moved any steel. Like you pretty much,
Yep.
you either have to have a power hammer or something, or you just have to really
Or
hate
press.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. Right. Yeah.
because that steel,
No kidding.
even in an annealed state, that steel does not move very easy. And
Right.
so, I mean, I know that some people, they do mild steel and put a hardened bit in
Right.
it, like
Yep.
something that you can harden, and all sorts of stuff. But I just try to find people that I admire their work, and I'm like, okay, if a customer
Right.
comes by and it's a no for me, then I'll try to guide them in the right direction. But
Yep.
they'll always know why I say no, and
Right.
it's not just me being persnickety, but it is because I just don't think that I can
Right.
do it the same way as like somebody else, and it's not worth my time. It's just that I would have to invest so much time in this. It's not economical in a
Right.
way that
Right.
I wouldn't produce the same work. They wouldn't be as happy. I wouldn't be able to charge as much, and they
Right.
would be out whatever time it takes for me to actually make it. So like overall, I just pass it on. I try to like you know
Right.
the whole
Yep.
karma thing. I figure if somebody
Yep.
also is it's outside of their skill set, that if they think that I do a better job at
Right.
something, maybe one day they'll pass me some business. But
Yep.
it's a
What's that?
yeah. But you know, your relationship with Terry is has been interesting to me. Like, do you guys? How long have you guys been friends?
I mean, I've known him since he was a teenager, so you know, I've known him for a long time.
Do you are there other like knife makers as part of like your Texas group that you affiliate directly with? I mean, or is like what is your like core group of
I, as far as knife makers,
mhm.
well, I mean, I talked to James Fleming quite a bit. Um, American Wastelander up in he's actually in Davenport, Iowa. What's funny is I'm from Iowa, and I live in Texas making knives, and he's from Texas, living up in Iowa. He makes knives also. Um, God, who else do I know that makes knives? I don't even know. Well, I mean, honestly, part of the guild is like James James Hughes is a buddy of mine,
Mhm.
you know, and I don't know. I don't know. I don't really. I guess not being in the guild, I really don't pursue. You know what? Here's one of the things. So they do the knife show. They do Blade in Fort Worth. They do that one every year.
Mhm.
And the last 2 years I've gone, and I don't get a booth down there, um, but I go down there and I literally don't look at a single knife. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I just go down there and talk to the people, talk to all the people that I know. I mean Gary Langley, that dude's amazing. Makes just the most intense knives. Um, Then I start saying names, then I'll start forgetting names. And
going
but yeah,
going back to
there's a bunch of cats. Yeah, yeah. There's a bunch of cats from the guild. Ronnie Packard. Actually, Ronnie Packard's one of my favorite dudes. He's been making knives almost as long as I've been alive,
wow.
and he is just the raddest dude. Um, yeah, there's not really a lot of knife makers that I really like. Like I don't really call up other knife makers and have knife conversations. You know what I mean? My buddy Jason Keene, is a knife maker and a tattoo artist up in Wyoming, and I talk to him all the time, but we don't talk about knives.
Yeah.
We just talk about life, and everything else. So,
Yeah, well, I think that's the point I'm trying to get to. Is like it seems like the circle of people that you keep close and everything is well. It just seems like you have a lot of people that you uh, commune with,
right,
and
right,
you can step outside of knives and what it is that you're doing, and just be genuinely interested in life
right,
and
right.
stuff.
Yeah.
But Gary Langley. Speaking of him, he is one of the most genuinely nice people that I've ever met.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's a
Um,
rad dude.
we I didn't have a table at Blade, Texas this year, and
Right.
I brought my daughter, our she's now 8, to the show because she likes to collect stickers and she'll put them all over her
Right.
door, right?
Yep. Yep.
And we went by his boot or his table, and he had sat there and collected stickers for her and then gave them to her. And I was like,
Wow. Yeah.
when my stepdaughter's uh, uh, when our grandchild had passed, she was
Right.
prematurely born, right? She Langley had donated a knife and everything, and he was just like
Wow.
so genuinely sweet with my wife and everything too. I just
Right.
he's like everybody's grandpa.
Yeah. 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 He's an amazing dude. He is. He is. Well, and to be honest, that was part of my, I don't want to say my problem with the guild, but that was one of the issues. I mean, kind of a good old boys club. Not everybody. And like I say, I mean, Ronnie's probably one of the older. I don't know how old Ronnie is, but like I say, he's been making knives as long as I've been alive, and he was just the sweetest, raddest dude. But there's a lot of them dudes that are just, they're good old boys. They're set in their ways, and if it's not done this way, it's not right. And I am definitely, um, opposed and the opposite of the good old boy type. So I think I rubbed people the wrong way that way too. Or at least a little bit. So
Oh yeah, when I was getting introduced into the knife scene when I started, there was the guy I bought the shop from was telling some of his
right,
collectors that I made knives, and I was making some models that he made. He said,
right,
he's really smart, but like he has tattoos, and he's like, so like don't hold that against him. I was like, what?
right, right, right,
As it's like there's sometimes with like those cultures, I don't know whether you call it good old boys or
right,
not, where it's just kind of like if somebody's different or they think a different way or whatever, that
right,
they're persona non grata or whatever. It's like
right,
I,
right,
I don't entirely understand that. Now there's plenty of people out there that are freaky weird with their opinions
right,
on life and
right,
everything, that I'm just kind of like, it seems a little too chaotic for me, but
right. Oh yeah.
um, I try not to be too judgy.
Right, right,
But
right,
but yeah, I would say with any guild or anything like that, man, it's that's the problem, is that you're joining a group of people that say that you should do something a certain way in order to meet their conditions. And
yeah,
it's the same as any
yeah.
other type of fraternity or group, and you got to either decide on whether you're a conformist or you're a rebel.
Was it Groucho Marx that used to say, "I wouldn't be a member of any club or any group that would have me"?
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and I kind of feel that way too. Like
Right,
there's a portion of these groups that I think is a validation, right? So I
right,
mean,
right,
like I can make knives up to the standard of the National Guild,
right,
and I think that's been enough for me. And my takeaway from that is like I'm still a guild member and everything,
right,
and I help them out where I can. But the idea, at least, is that now that I know I can push myself to make knives that conform to a standard, what I take away from that is that uh, I can think about a knife and the way that I want to make it, and I know what kind of steps I need to follow in order to get it to that point.
right,
Where it seems like intrinsic to me with you, at least, like you've been an artist for a long time, and whether
right,
it's
right, right.
tattoos or whether it's doing your own motorcycle work or things like that, like you've been able to you've had your personality, you've had your aesthetic, and the way that you think about constructing things for a long time,
Right.
and so knives is just another medium by
Oh
which you
yeah,
express
absolutely,
yourself, right? So I mean,
for sure.
like what you like about knives, and then you apply yourself to it. So then after that, it's just understanding the mechanics of how you do certain things to get to your vision,
Right.
right?
Yep. Yep.
And that's different because I've done all sorts of like hand stuff, but there's a difference between functional art and um, getting to a place where it's like the sublime arts. I would
Right.
say,
Right. Right. Right.
you can make a screwdriver that looks like glorified shank,
Right.
and so on and so forth. But when you really want to like portray something that you have in your head, um, you got to understand the mechanics first. But sometimes you got to understand
Right.
what is it in your head that you actually like.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But so I mean that's
Absolutely.
interesting. How does that kind of artistry follow you into what you do with FTW? What you play bass for the band,
I
right?
do. Yep. I play bass. Yep. And sing.
And sing.
Yep. Yep.
And
That's not how it. That's not how it started out. But yeah. Yeah.
well, tell me how it started out, because I'm interested in what actually got
Well,
you into
I mean,
being
we
in a
started.
band.
That band was. That band was just. We got the band going. We had a singer. Um, we got the singer just didn't flow with us, so we got rid of him. And then we tried out a couple other people, but it just didn't work. And to be honest, it was just kind of out of, I don't want to say necessity, but it just kind of out of convenience a little bit. A power trio, was easier to deal with. than having four people. You know what I mean? Having one less person, the band is just one less person to have to deal with. So, we got the band going. We had a singer. We got rid of him, and it was just we looked for a guy, but we couldn't find anybody. And I finally just took over just to make that transition easier, and it just kept us going. And here it is, like 13 years later, I still sing in the band, even though I don't want to. But,
kind of like not wanting to make sheaths, but just doing it because it's part of it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But and what genre of music do you guys mostly stay in? Would you say?
We are like we're like a desert rock, stoner rock, um, that kind of vibe, but kind of doom stuff. But we're all in our 50s, so we're all kind of like metalheads. So it's definitely heavy. It has definitely a metal edge to it. That, and I've convinced them to go with my old adage of, more is better. So we all play stereo rigs. We all play, massive amounts of equipment, haul that stuff around. We're just louder, bigger, than anything else we can find around us. So
Yeah, and how does that work from a business perspective? I mean, do you guys just go out and play venues and sell tickets
so
and
the
things like
band
that, or
is
what do you do?
no, I mean the band is just a hobby. Like I mean, we have no illusion. We don't have a record. We don't have a record deal. We have no illusions of like going on tours and anything like that. It's literally just kind of a hobby. We just enjoy doing it. I think there was a time in my life where I pursued that and was trying to reach that goal. Um, but it didn't happen. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. And several bands, and you know, I enjoy playing music. I enjoy hanging out with the dudes and jamming. So yeah, we just like I say that whole thing is just kind of it's like a pretty expensive hobby. But we're actually going to play a show in Terlingua in October. Actually, we have two shows in October. But like that's like literally from I'm trying to even think. What was the last show that FTW even played? Did he? Oh no, we played. Oh yeah. We just played a show at Division Brewing. I think that was the only other show we had this year. So I mean, we have three shows this year. You know what I mean? It's like not like we plan whole tours and stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah, I always seem to miss you guys when you play. Like I see something come up, it's like, oh, they played here. And it's like, oh, like
right.
I'd like to at least
Well,
go out and see a
that's
show.
kind of the part of the aesthetic of FTW too. Is we're FTW, and FTW. It's the idea of the band is it's kind of like the FTW, the biker adage of FTW. Forever two wheels. Um, Feed the wolf. There's lots of different things that FTW stands for, but it also stands for Fort Worth. And we're in Fort Worth. We're a Fort Worth band. We hardly play Dallas, but that's kind of the gig. Is like we don't have a record. We don't have a bunch of stuff. We don't have a band camp and all that kind of stuff. If you want to see us, you got to come see us. If you want to hear what we sound like, you got to come. You got to come to one of the shows because that's really where we're having the most fun. I mean, we could do a record, but you know, you're just gonna sit in your room and listen to the record. And it's way more fun to come out to hang out with us while we jam. So
Yeah, and from what I've learned, that you have an industrial fog machine, right?
an industrial fog machine, yes, we do. We fog places out. We fog places out so hard that like big clubs where their air conditioning system, like you go in the bathroom and the vents look like fog machines. We used to play at the grotto, and that place is crazy because we pumped so much fog in there that it would pour out the soffit, and it looked like the building was on fire. We played the Aardvark one time, and like they got big garage doors on the front, so we got done with our set, and they opened the garage doors, and the fog completely filled Berry Street, like completely filled the street.
Wow. Yeah. I wouldn't say like I'm a metalhead, but I appreciate lots of different kinds of music. And
Right.
when I was a kid in the early '90s, there was this theme park. Well, it's like a family-owned theme park called Knoebels up in Pennsylvania, and
Okay.
they had this one ride where it sits like you're on this spoke and wheel type of thing, and it goes up and down, like oscillates up and down,
Oh,
and
right.
they
All
they
right.
have they have strobe lights and a fog machine that they fog out, and then it's like a light show in there. It's all dark, right? And you
Right.
go
Right.
forwards and backwards and oscillate up and down on these like little tracks, and
Right.
it was called the Cosmotron. But they pretty much like they would play some music that was like newer pop hits or whatever,
Right.
but they would
Right.
play a lot of metal, and like all these guys was
Right.
like they were all metalheads basically. And I was like, my appreciation for metal, I think early on came from the
Right.
Cosmotron, and it was like I
Nice.
always
Nice.
wanted to go into that thing. I think sometimes I wrote it so many times that I would get sick because like the
Right. 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 Right.
centrifugal force and whatnot. But yeah, it's interesting because if you're like if you're a metalhead or you like that kind of
Mhm.
thing, it is like something that you like to your core.
Oh yeah, 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 for sure. Yeah, I mean, we actually had band rehearsal last night, and this time of year with my travel schedule, we end up missing rehearsals quite a bit. But that's kind of our thing. Like we get together every Tuesday night and hang out and jam. It's kind of like our, just our thing. So,
Yeah, and how long have you played bass for?
actually, I played bass for I mean, I've played bass for FTW. That's it. I've 13 years. I played bass in this band, but I've played guitar uh, uh, since I was 14.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, when I was 14, I picked it up, started messing around a little bit. When I was 18, just say I had a lot of time to sit around and learn the guitar. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
learned to play guitar. I had a couple guys that showed me some stuff, and just yeah, so
yeah.
I've been playing guitar for a long time.
Yeah, I've always dabbled, but I was a classically trained violinist,
No kidding.
uh, and yeah, and got into being the. I mean, Pennsylvania's high Appalachians, but it's still
Right,
Appalachian,
right.
right? And so the country music and square dancing and
Oh yeah, yeah.
like real traditional folk music and
Yep.
stuff is like very popular on that area. And so
Oh
I've
wow.
played fiddle and mandolin for
Sweet.
20 years now, probably.
That's very cool. Yeah.
But my thing is like I've never found any groups or people that want to actually jam though. It seems like if there are groups that play, they're that's them, and there's not
Right,
really like a whole lot of jamming sessions. Like you used to be able to go to like fiddle clubs or things like that back up in the
right.
where I'm from, and you would just like learn stuff and people would show you techniques and you could play kind
Wow.
of an
Right, right,
ensemble
right.
stuff. But down here, it's a little bit different. Like like there's more music.
Kind of like an open mic night for folk
Hmm.
music kind of stuff, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
that sounds
yeah,
cool.
yeah. To me, it's more good old boys when it comes to music down here because you have
Right,
people that they'll play either by themselves or in groups. But it's really hard to break into that to just like jam
right.
session type of
Yep.
stuff. But I thought that was always interesting. There was a small portion of time where I wanted to get into electric fiddle so I could do like
Right
some
on,
metal
right on.
stuff, but
Yeah,
there was never really an opportunity to pursue it.
right. Yeah.
But that's pretty cool. Any
Aaron, the
and
electric fiddle player. That'd be great. That'd
mm,
be good stuff. Maybe we'll have to come
well,
up with something. We'll have to come up with like a song where you can sit in with us and we'll run your fiddle. We'll run a fiddle through a distortion pedal and have some fun
that
with it.
that would be fun. But I don't know. It's been so long since I've played around anybody else.
Oh,
I
right,
might get
okay,
like self
right,
conscious.
right, right.
I'm like I don't
That's
know.
good
I'm not
stuff.
good anymore. Like
Right, I got you. I got you.
But yeah, I mean, I used to play I played in a symphony orchestra and a chamber orchestra.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, for several years. I got into it. My teacher had kind of like this connection where she knew the concertmeister at this college, And
Right.
so her like select students, and I don't know what actually made you select student, whether you kissed her butt or you
Right.
were
Right.
actually good. She would kind of funnel you into that, and you could be in. I mean, if you kind of did well enough,
Right.
you could get into the symphony, and I also got into chamber, but it was all classical
Sweet.
music stuff.
Right. 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 My 17-year-old plays the saxophone,
Oh yeah,
and he's in school and does it in the band and stuff, and he plays really well. We actually got him lessons when he started in band in sixth grade. We got him lessons and got him going all that, and he picked it up really well. So he plays the heck out of that thing. And our youngest is just getting ready. He had his sixth grade orientation today, and he's going to play the trombone. So that's going to be fun.
that's cool.
You know,
Yeah, I've always really liked brass. I don't know. My fingers, like I can't. I can play Native American flute as like a
okay,
woodwind.
right,
But it's real simple. I mean, it's like,
right,
everything's so it was easy for me to pick it up. But I tried the flute, and there's like too much finger. There's just too many finger positions and stuff.
right,
And I've tried the guitar, but I have really fat fingers. They're like little
right,
sausage links, and
right.
so I haven't been able to really get some of the chords.
Man, you know what? I tell you, there's some dudes that play guitar that got big fingers. One of the things that always got me was, um, like I carry my own fingernail clippers with me, partially just because I'm a Boy Scout and I like to be prepared. But it started from going to rehearsal. I get to rehearsal, my nails were too long. I just chew them, and I got tired of doing that. Anyway, watch Stevie Ray Vaughan videos. That dude had like crazy long fingernails. You know what I mean? Crazy long fingernails. But he played with the pad of his finger. Like I played more
Uh-huh.
with the tip of my finger. He played more with the pads of his fingers with those crazy nails and was still able to play. So, get you a classical guitar. Classical guitars are all
Yeah,
the same distance. The strings are the
yeah.
same
Well,
distance
and
apart.
people when it comes to I mean, when it comes to fiddle playing, there's all sorts, but there's also a lot of different styles. Like you basically like whatever type of
Right.
handicaps. I'm using air quotes there, but handicaps you have, whether it's fat fingers, skinny fingers, or whatever. There's
Yep.
just something like you figure out a way to augment your playing to fit your mode. But like one of the
Right.
most famous violinists in this era is Itzhak Perlman, and he has like very fat fingers. He has like these
Right.
humongous fingers, and he is able to make those his violin sing in a way that just
Did he change his tuning or anything so that he could just do single note,
no.
single chords, or
No,
no?
so I believe he was born in Poland, and he ended up getting polio,
Right.
and his parents, like, he didn't have to. I don't think he had to do iron lung or anything, but he was convalescing, and you would see all the kids out there playing, and his coping
Right.
mechanism was to play violin. and
Right.
and then he got well enough, like he still had to walk with crutches and stuff, but then I can't remember if
Right.
his parents I can't remember if his parents put him into a school in over in Europe somewhere, or whether they emigrated
Right.
to New York area, and he
Right.
was picked up by a in Juilliard. He got in there, and then there was
No kidding.
two teachers that Dorothy Delaney and Galamian. They're like, when it comes to classical playing and pedagogy, they're like up there on like the way
Right
that they
on.
kind of changed the classical scene, especially in the uh, 40s and and whatnot. But
Right.
they were instructors in Juilliard, and they basically went to town on him, like constantly pushing, this is the way that you get that
Right.
sound out of there. This is how you do bow control and everything, and
Right.
kind of helped him to figure out how to get the same sound that a classical musician would get,
Right.
but using his handicaps. So, like,
Right.
he does some things to augment his playing. Like, you're not supposed to rest the neck of the violin in inside of the where your at the
Right.
base of where your thumb is at, but you can see him, and he's just like it's like way up there, but he has to do that in order to reach some of the like
Right.
the G,
Using his thumb to fret over the top and
well,
stuff.
yeah, except like he uses it to cradle the neck and then be able to reach over his fingers, because they wouldn't normally be
Oh,
able to hit
gotcha.
some of those notes.
All
And
right.
so, yeah, he's done the same kind of thing. But if it's interesting, like a Django Reinhardt, famous guitarist, and like his he was a, I don't know if the term is correct anymore, but he was a gypsy over in Romania or somewhere like that, right?
Right.
And his carriage burned down because they were carriage gypsies, and
Right.
his hand was burned. So he basically, some of the style that he played in that everybody knows him for is actually because of his disability.
Right. I know. I've heard that story. I know what you're talking about. You mentioned that.
I think he had 3 fingers, like 2 fused together after they burned, so he had 3 fingers, and some of those arpeggios and stuff that you hear, those little rolls, that's all because he couldn't play anything else, like chords that are complex.
Right.
But yeah, it's interesting to me how like the arts. A point that I'm trying to kind of make in some of the stuff that I'm doing with podcasts is that really the question I want to ask people is like why create something, right? Like the at the core of it, it's like what causes us to create things, and then what gets us into knives, because arguably, you've done so much. Like you have the I think our listeners have the benefit of seeing that, based on your age and everything, you've had the ability to cross into a lot of different types of creation and art, and to see kind of what that motivating factor is. And that's really interesting to me is you strip out the like falling into knives or whatever, and you just talk about creation and artistry. And what does that actually look like? And you've done it all. Like you're a musician, you're a tattoo artist.
My wife says that a lot. She says, I don't know how you do it, but you take what you love and make it what you do. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like it is really compelling to me. Like I want the people to think that you can do anything you put your mind to, but especially in your case, man, it takes a lot of grit and determination. You're waking up in all like odd hours to beat the Texas heat, and your nose to the grindstone constantly, and just trying to put out like positive energy, good vibes, and kind of listen to the direction that your heart is trying to take you and what you're doing with like all things. And that to me is like super genuine.
Yeah, I think I would be doing that even if I wasn't making knives. I think at this point I would be, yeah, I think I would be just exactly the same, except doing something else.
Yeah. I mean, from your time in Jiffy Lube, were you just like the most awesome worker there?
Man, I really enjoyed working there. I mean, it was a great job. The people that I worked with were just a lot of fun. I'm really good friends with, several of them still. It's funny because that's one of the things I keep trying to get. My oldest is looking for work and getting ready to start into the workforce, and I'm like, man, like getting a job is scary. Your first day on the job is always terrible, but man, I'm like, you're gonna meet so many new people. It's just you meet people at a job it's a different way of meeting people. You know what I mean? Like you know, you got kind of a captive audience, and uh, so yeah, I'm like, man, you're gonna meet so many people. You'll meet people that you'll probably know the rest of your life. You know what I mean? So yeah,
Yeah, like to me, some of what you've been talking about reminds me that life experiences should force you outside of your comfort zone, because when you're outside of your comfort zone, that's really when there's that paradigm that allows you to be authentic and create and to think outside of yourself, like what makes you comfortable versus what pushes you. And that's something that I think, I mean, at some point in time, I think we all get into it's not doldrum, but it is a repeatability. Like I know what I'm going to do tomorrow, approximately. I know what I'm going to apply to my work. And that's, like the idea though is like, like in knives, you have to be repeatable at some point in time. There has to be
Right.
some element that what your next step is going to be and everything. Otherwise, you can't get from the start to the finish of anything. But they're like getting outside of your comfort zone really just allows you to experience life in a way that if everything's programmatic, you just like your
Oh
experiences are
yeah.
limited.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I know several people that are caught in that, and it's depressing. And when you get to a point where you're living life where you're happy, it's tough to like, you know, I got a lot of friends that are like that. That they hate their life and they hate their job and they're just like rah, rah, rah. And I'm like, man, I don't know how you can survive like that. You know what I mean? You can change it. You know, it's
Oh yeah,
changeable.
yeah. I
So
mean, even in technology and stuff, like I would work for a company, and it would take me about 6 months to figure out the company, and the rest of the time not to quit it.
right,
So the longest job I've ever
right,
held, I think, is about 5 years. You're either at a company or in a stream that takes you where you want to go, or you're not. And like
right,
everything that you can't do at a company, like I mean, you discover stuff about yourself and things that you're interested in constantly in technology because
right.
things change so quick. And a company that is just like stuck in their ways keeps you from being able to explore that.
Oh yeah,
And
for
so
sure.
yeah, I mean,
Yep.
in the early days, I was like, I figured out this thing and I want to apply it. And then the company is like, nah, we don't want to do that. Like, you do it our way. Um, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
so,
Uh,
but yeah, I mean, I just figured out too, like you need to be able to make money and be stable too. So sometimes you have to stay at a
right.
company and then have side projects and things that keep you, interested in creation and discovery and everything. So
Always
yeah,
hustling.
one way or another.
Always hustling.
So, usually at the end of my interviews and stuff, I ask guests like to impart some wisdom on like the newer or new knife maker. I mean, I know
Uh,
you scatter pearls of wisdom everywhere you go, but like
right,
for
right.
the knife maker that is struggling with identity or is just trying to get from like learning the mechanics of knife making to building a brand, like what kind of advice would you have for them?
uh, man, let me think. Well, I'll tell you one of my favorite, they say this about a lot of things, but one of my favorite knife quotes was that if you want to make a large fortune, if you want to make a small fortune building knives, start with a big fortune, right? Uh, man, I can tell you the one thing that probably made the biggest difference in my knife making when I started out was slowing down. You know, when I first started making knives, I mean, I would work like it's funny because I quit tattooing for a while, and I didn't make enough knives to make enough money, so I went back to tattooing. And I went back to tattooing 3 days a week, and I would tell people I tattoo 3 days a week, but I make knives the other 7 days of the week. And I mean, I would work 18 hours nonstop and just sleep and go back out there and work, 18 hours straight on my days off from tattooing. I would get so excited to finish knives, and that was the one thing that really took me like to the next level was just slowing down. You know, like it's tough to. One of the things I remember, it's funny because I'm going through this with Mikey right now. Is I can remember being at a point where I didn't know what the next step was, and getting to that point where you're comfortable with like I can make a whole knife, and like as I'm doing each process, like I already know what's next, and what order to do them in. Um, you've seen somebody profile a knife and then hand sand the spine to where it's just a glistening, glowing, perfect mirror. And it's like, man, you're gonna put a handle on there and then profile it and scratch. You know what I mean? Like, um, but yeah, slowing down, really like figure out how to make a knife, and then figure out how to slow down and actually do a good job. You know what I mean? That makes a big difference.
Yeah, yeah. I think Bill Rupel has coined a saying: you don't do a step in knives before it needs to be done, right? Um,
Right.
it's like there's plenty of things that you can actually compound an error in a knife by
Right.
doing it. So you do it too early, and then it's too thin, or it doesn't meet the specifications. Handle fit up, dovetail bolsters. Too thin on liners for pocket knives, so on and so forth. It's like
Right.
so many things that you'll pull it out of whatever tolerance you're trying to keep. And I think it's a good point too, because man, there's so many times when you're like even profiling blades and stuff. If you profile a blade and you get it to its final finish, and then you have to go through and grind things off when you're fitting handles, you can actually take it out of proportion. So that aesthetic that you're trying to keep is totally blown away because you finished something too soon.
Yep, exactly.
No, I totally agree. I mean, that's the one thing, making knives is like, time is money, because you don't really, I mean, if it takes you 15 hours to make a 5-hour blade, then you're losing that extra time.
Right.
But even still, I'd much rather make a good knife than I would try to figure out what the dollar amount. Yeah. Well.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's mostly kind of like how much you getting paid per hour to make a blade. It just compounds the more that you think about it. It's the same way with me preparing for shows. Like I'm like, okay, I want to have 15 blades that I can take to a show, and then somewhere along the line, I'm like, I'm going to take 10 blades because the ones that I have on my bench are the ones I want to do right. And then at some point, it's like, now I'm going to take 7 blades because what I was able to get like absolutely right was just the number that, I actually, I went through the entire process, and whatever I'm left with is what I spent that time and energy to get as right as I could. But isn't that right? I mean, it doesn't go to a customer until it meets those specifications.
Right. Yep.
No, I totally agree. Well, buddy, it's been a real pleasure to have you on the show.
Well, this has been amazing. You've done a fantastic job. I felt really comfortable talking to you, and to be honest, I'm excited about going to listen to some of your other episodes and seeing who else you had on and checking that out.
Yeah,
so,
well, I mean, no, it's
been a great conversation.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, dude. I mean, I just want people to be a fly on the wall on good, honest conversations about creation and creativity. And at some point in time, talk to Terry about possibly coming on the show at some point in time, because I'd like to pick his brain about stuff. And if there's anybody else that you have in mind,
Gotcha.
turn them my way. But this is what I do as a part-time knife maker is doing part-time podcasting too. So yeah. And I mean, I hope that in some way, people look at your work and in this, the group of people that listen to the podcast, that they can become more familiar with you too, because again, larger than life. I mean, I've always appreciated talking to you, and you're
I appreciate that, brother. I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah,
man.
Definitely somebody I admire. So, good luck with everything. We'll keep in touch and keep on keeping on.
Absolutely. Thanks, bud.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Good Old Blades podcast. Remember that you are loved, and God bless.